Marshfield Zoning Board of Appeals, Tuesday, June 25th. This is a hybrid meeting. If dialing in on a phone, please use *6 to mute and unmute. We don't have to do a roll call because everybody's here. First off, we're going to do 2444 John and Patricia Galafaro, 99 Bayberry Road. I'd like to make a motion to withdraw. Second.
Larry Keane, aye.
Grover Hensley, aye.
Ryan Sullivan, aye.
Heidi Conway, aye.
Jean Lee, aye.
Mac Brothers, aye.
Is that it? That's all we have to do. Oh. Okay. Let's see. Max, you want to put that back up there? So I'd like to do 2428A, Nathan Collins, Next Grid, Inc. Yes? Oh, okay. We didn't read it in last time?
This is a new,
Oh, okay. Okay. The petitioner is seeking a special permit in accordance with 305-12.04 of the Marshfield Municipal Code to install a 240 kW AC photovoltaic system consisting of 2 carports and a rooftop array totaling 510 panels at the South River Elementary School on the property located at 76 South River Street, which is further identified on the assessor's maps as being on parcel G08-05-24 and is located in an R2 zoning district. Ed?
Good evening, members of the board. For the record, Nathan Collins, Director of Engineering with NextGrid. I have a plan. I can share my screen if provided that ability.
Yeah, I'll take care of that in a second, Nathan, sorry.
Nope, no worries.
You know, I don't know that I can do that. I think the IT guy has to make you a co-host.
Host. Okay. Do the members of the board have the plans in front of them?
Not.
No. Do you have them?
in the file, electronic file.
Oh, we have one on our phone. Can Andrew put them up from what he has?
Yep.
Thank you. Take over, buddy.
The site plan?
That should be fine.
Okay.
Withdrew that already.
So, as noted, we are in front of you, working with the town, proposing a photovoltaic solar array at the South River School. It has an address of 59 Hatch Street, but the legal address for the property is 76 South River Street. The project, most of the parcel, I'll say 98% of the parcel is located in the R2 district. There is a small triangle in the north west that's actually located in the business district, but all of the proposed work that we're proposing is in the R2 district, which per the town's bylaws requires a special permit for the installation of the carports as accessory structures in the parking lot. We're proposing panels on the rooftop, which we provided, approximate limits of where those will be located, but the special permit is really associated with the 2 carports that are located in the parking lot behind the existing fire station. It's two total carports, approximately 250 panels total. The carports themselves are constructed with steel, and they will have foundations represented by those kind of solid circles every 27 feet on center. And then they will have cross members that will run in a north-south pattern. That's the solid bold line. And the limits of the actual solar panels themselves are represented by those dashed lines. The carports, as proposed, continue to meet all of the setback and dimensional requirements of the district. It's really just not adding any impervious area, stormwater will drain through the gaps in the solar panels as they're mounted, and will run down to the existing pavement and into whatever drainage system is within that system. The canopies themselves will have a height to the underside of 14 feet 6 inches. We use that height to accommodate most municipalities' fire trucks, but certainly, we'll meet with the fire department directly just to confirm that those heights are acceptable to them. It's really all I have. I'm happy to answer any technical questions or any questions that the board may have.
Are there any other panels like this in town?
Yes, we completed a carport array at the police station.
The dog park, is that also similar to what is going to be?
Yeah, that is proposed, yes, that's not constructed yet. We also have them proposed and approved at the new DPW facility. And we also have a system proposed at 500, the Furnace Street Middle School. That was approved by the planning board just last week under a separate special permit.
Thank you.
But the only ones we have constructed are at the police station.
Okay.
That area is kind of recessed from that roadway where where the baseball diamond is. It's kind of higher than that. Is that 14 feet difference big enough to get you enough sunlight?
Yes, these are, so the arrays are run at a north-south orientation, so as the sun rises and sets, it'll pass directly over these panels, and there's really little to no shading in that area, so based on, we do what's called a PV-SIS study that analyzes, the sun as it passes during different times of the year, so we don't anticipate any issues.
All right.
What is the lifespan of these panels?
So these panels all come with a 20-year warranty. The lease with the town is for 20 years. There's 2 5-year add options, but the panels are all warranted for 20 years. That's kind of the industry standard.
No, at the end of the lease, are they removed?
Yes, so typically what we do is provide a decommissioning bond. The town's covered in the event that Next Grid is no longer around. But yes, after the 20 years, typically they're removed again unless a new lease would happen to be put together and we could just add new panels to the steel structure because obviously that's not going to go anywhere.
Thank you.
So can you move the screen back up to see the actual picture of where it's going to be, like, Andrew, on the site? I just saw it right before that one.
If you scroll down on that plan I provided, yeah, there you go. That's what's called our interconnection set. It's more of an electrical plan, so.
I can't really tell what it is, like where it's going to be on the property there. So you've got the fields in the front, you've got your driveway to get in, the school, and then the playground's in the back.
Yep.
So where's it going?
As soon as you drive past the fire station, that first row of parking and second row
Yeah,
of parking?
the first and second row of parking, correct.
So like by the administration building?
Oh, no,
Right.
right here, Heidi, you see this is the facilities manager's building, this is the fire station.
Yeah,
Directly behind the fire station,
okay,
it's these 2 rows of parking and these 2 rows of parking.
okay.
So they're proposed in these 2 areas right here, behind the fire station, down off of, this slopes, this whole area right here slopes down from the entrance into the school.
Yep.
So it's these 2 areas right here.
Okay,
Right, and just to add, so those foundations are located in a center line of that parking, so it does not impact parking count or vehicular access within that parking lot. So similar to like a light pole you may see in a parking lot, that's where the foundation will be located.
So, I mean, this may have already been said, and I'm sorry if you have to repeat it, but how long do they take to put in? Is the playground there going to be closed as a result of whatever trucks or whatever might be coming in to do stuff, or it's a pretty well-used thing over there?
Yeah, no, we have done dozens, if not hundreds of projects in active parking lots, so we may have a stage where, we close that, I'll call it the northern section of parking while we install the footings, and then, move the parking down, but we will not have to close any access to that road, or access to that playground.
And when does this anticipate happening if everything's approved? Like, how long before you actually start doing something?
Realistically, probably late fall. We have to close on financing, and to close on financing, we need all our permits in hand. So we have about a dozen projects that we have slated to start construction in July, obviously this not being one of them. And this would be part of probably the second tranche of projects. Similarly, that's also when the DPW building and the dog park would be constructed.
Do we have any questions from the audience?
Nathan, how long after you construct these do they start generating revenue for the town of Marshfield?
So, I didn't write the lease, but I know our lease agreement, my understanding is it's an annual payment. I apologize, I do not know exactly when that first lease payment is made per project. But, once it's constructed, we then have to, generally the way it works is we complete our work and then we submit what's called a COC, Certificate of Completion, to the utility. The utility in town is Eversource. Then Eversource has to complete their work, which is down by it's closer to the school, if you scroll that plan up. And it's only once Eversource has their work completed that we're given permission to operate the facility.
Okay, I guess I inartfully asked my question. Let's just say you install these on Monday, July 1st. When do the panels start generating energy? Using that hypothetical July 1st date as the date that you complete your installation, assuming that Eversource works in an expeditious manner.
Sure. So the panels start generating electricity and energy as soon as we install our connection to the panel.
Okay, then Eversource does their job, then it starts feeding power back into the grid and generating revenue for next grid, correct?
Correct.
And then at some point, Marshfield gets a check based on the terms of their lease agreement, which is not subject to this hearing.
That is correct.
Okay.
An annual lease payment. So each year for 20 years.
Thank you.
Yep.
Vin Falcaro, Holly Road. In thinking about 250-odd panels 20 years from now, is that bond escalated over the 20 years, or is it a one-time payment? These things are hazardous waste. I'd hate to see the town get stuck with the cost of decommissioning.
So the bond is, it's renewed automatically on an annual basis, and there is typically a escalation rate associated to that bond in terms of cost. We prepare the original bond based on prevailing wage rates as of today, and there's typically a rate established to it for an inflation throughout those 20 years.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else from the audience?
Yeah, I didn't ask you.
Andrew, do you have anything to add?
No, I don't. I just thank Nathan for his patience in reapplying back to this whole thing. We had a bit of a mix-up the first time, so appreciate that.
Thank you.
Bob, do you have anything?
All right, seeing that there's none, I move to close 2428A Nathan Collins Next Grid Incorporated, 76 South River Street. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Larry Keane, aye.
Grover Hensley, aye.
Brian Sullivan, aye?
Brian Murphy, aye.
Heidi Conway, aye.
Jean Lee, aye.
Mac Brothers, aye.
I'm going to move that the board vote to grant the special permit, subject to the conditions. Require a building permit and the final as-built site plan.
Second?
Oh, no, I'm not done. In conditions, in accordance with 305-1204 of the Marshfield zoning bylaws, to install a 240-watt kilowatt AC photovoltaic system consisting of 2 carports and a rooftop array totaling 510 panels at the South River School on the property known as 76 South River Street, located in the R2 zoning district as shown on the site plans dated, can anyone read that other than me? Can't read that. 4924. And a removal bond in amount acceptable by the town of Marshfield. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Larry Keane, aye.
Grover Hensley, aye.
Brian Sullivan, aye?
Brian Murphy, aye.
Heidi Conway, aye.
Jean Lee, aye.
Mac Brothers, aye.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
So B is done, right?
No,
Oh, no. Which one?
we did, this one here.
Oh, okay. So now we have 2441 Katrina Analetto and Paulo Pereira.
Okay. Those are long ones.
The petitioner is, hello, the petitioner is seeking a special permit in accordance with 305. Petitioner is seeking a special permit in accordance with 305-1012 and 305-1301, if necessary, of the Marshfield Municipal Code to construct a 30-foot by 19-foot addition and a 34-foot by 20-foot detached garage on the property located at 351 Highland Street, which is further identified on the assessor's maps as being on parcel C160108A and is located in the R1 zoning district.
Yep.
Name and address for the record.
Katrina Analetto, 351 Highland Street, Marshfield.
Go ahead.
Yep, we've been at this address since 2008, and we've been sort of trying to figure out a better way to utilize the upstairs. We have sort of a shotgun layout of the second level, so it goes from one bedroom to another room, to my son's bedroom, to a really narrow staircase. So what we're trying to do is add another staircase in the connector space, which is that 8 by 11, and then that will go into an addition that's that 30 by 19 space, which will add an office downstairs for myself, a family room, and then a large game room up above it. So we'll better utilize the sun, have better use. So right now, the house is just under 1,800 square feet. This adds about 1,300. Now we're pretty sure this is where we're going to be. And then in terms of the garage, we have a ton of tools. We have a current barn, but it's uninsulated. It's just a rustic, old antique barn. So we're adding a garage detached away from that barn so that we can put tools in there, store my husband's bike and other things, and actually maybe put a car in there. It's a crazy idea. It may happen, it may not. But that's effectively what we're trying to do.
Okay.
Don't waste the space with a car.
Why bother? There's so many other things.
Any questions from the board?
No.
Just a beautiful house.
Oh, thank you. Did you
Yeah.
see the renderings?
Gorgeous.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, even the before. So the
think
one
it's
question
great.
I had is, in one plan, the land plan, I saw that the addition, where it crossed that rock wall,
Yep.
looked like it was touching a conservation easement area?
Oh, go ahead.
I just want to jump in. Jay had received,
That
That
was
was
my question.
Oh, yeah, that was that was last week. Yeah.
Okay, so that was my question is, have you applied and have you been approved by the Conservation Commission?
Yeah, yes, and the permit is ready. We do hope to keep as much of that rock wall in place. It's an antique. We bought it because it's an antique, so we're going to maintain as much of that character as we can.
I have one.
What?
Go ahead.
What if health is okay with this?
They're okay with it?
Yeah, I think the septic is a 4-bedroom. Like, I think way back in the day, it was considered a 4-bedroom house, but if you walked inside my house, you'd realize that it's not a 4-bedroom house. It's like, you'd have to go through like 3 people's bedrooms to get to a staircase.
I don't know.
That's not a healthy living.
Nancy, do we have a deed on file?
So no other questions? Any questions from the audience? Seeing that there's none, I move to close Katrina and Aletto and Paulo Pereira, 351 Highland Street, 2441. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Larry Keane, aye.
Grover Hensey, aye.
Brian Sullivan, aye.
Brian Murphy, aye.
Heidi Conway, aye.
Jean Lee, aye.
Mac Brothers, aye.
Okay, I move that the board vote to grant a special permit, subject to the conditions. This project will require 2 building permits, a certificate of occupancy, and a final as-built plan in accordance with 305-1012 and 305-1301 of the Marshfield zoning bylaws to construct a 30-foot by 19-foot addition and a 34-foot by 24-foot detached garage on the property located at 351 Highland Street, located in the R1 district, as shown on a set of plans, site plans dated April 25th, 2024 by Grady Consulting. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Larry Keane, aye.
Grover Hensey, aye.
Brian Sullivan, aye.
Brian Murphy, aye.
Heidi Conway, aye.
Jean Lee, aye.
Mac Brothers, aye.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Luck.
What's next?
So 2442, Colin Bono.
Are you going on it? What
Am I out?
are we doing? Oh, 12 here as well? Okay.
No, that's right. The petitioner is seeking a variance in accordance with 305-10-12-11 for relief from 305-607 and a special permit in accordance with 305-1302 CO1 and 305-1010 of the Marshfield Municipal Code to construct a 6-foot by 30-foot ramp and a 17.5-foot by 14-foot deck and a 9.8 by 5.7 ramp at a 246-foot by 5'7" pier with a 16 by 12 platform and 36 by 4 gangway and 3 60 by 6-foot floats on the property located at 12 Caswell Street, which is located in the, and I further identified on the assessor's maps as being on parcel M060802 and is located in the R3 zoning district. Name and address for the record, please.
Colin Bono, 12 Careswell Street.
Go ahead.
So I purchased the house, 12 Careswell Street, a couple years ago, and was looking to put a dock in. So I contacted Andrew over in the building department to kind of point me in the right direction. So he referred me to Dave Hill over at Mass DEP Waterways. So I had a couple conversations on the phone and over email with Dave Hill about the design of the pier and associated dock. And what you see is kind of his vision put on paper.
That's a lot of dock.
Andrew, do you have anything to add to this?
No, I mean, it's pretty standard
Straightforward.
stuff with
Yeah.
docks. He's got a floodplain permit. I know that he's working on his conservation permits and has applied for that, and that he's gonna be going for his Chapter 91 license and everything, so kind of, just a standard dock, trying to get it. It has to go through the zoning variance aspect because of the, going across the property line. The other aspect is that it's only proposed to be 5 feet from the property line instead of the standard 10 feet that a accessory structure is. And Colin explained to me, because he's like I forget what you are, Colin, but you're like a wetland scientist or something, right? Or a marine biologist or something, but He explained that, you know, having the dock kind of more in the center of the overall marsh there would be a lot more, you know, or like would help protect the overall wetland area than the, you know, the landform than if he went down the center of his property line, which would kind of clip one side of that marsh feature than the other. So that's about it.
Thank you. Anything from the board?
Colin, do you want to explain that, what you said to Andrew? I'm curious.
Sure. So the salt marshes are a delicate ecosystem, and that one happens to be a peninsula. So the intention of having it in the center of the resource area is to prevent damage to the edges of the salt marsh.
Makes sense to me.
Looks good. Anything from the audience here?
Yes, absolutely. My name is Brian Stack. I am the dock master of the yacht club, and I definitely have a few things to say. And we drafted a letter I'd like to read to the board and everybody here. But
Do you have a copy for the applicant?
I can supply that before we leave, absolutely, yeah. But the thing to note here on this drawing is the area of reconfiguration or the area configuration. But let me get through this quickly and then I'll just summarize the bullets that we really want to nail down here. So the yacht club has been in existence since 1958. You know, one of the programs we're very proud of is the sailing program. The youth sailing program, which has been continuous since the beginning without any major mishaps. You know, it's coordinated through the Marshfield Rec Department. We provide sailing lessons not only for members, children, but also residents of the surrounding communities. That runs for 6 weeks and provides sailing to about 130 children every year. We also employ 8 Marshfield residents as instructors each year, and it provides some revenue annually back to the Marshfield Rec Department. We operate this program at a loss, and we provide this as a service to the community consistent with our bylaws. The program uses 4 19-foot-long sailboats with a 7-foot beam and 18-foot-long. We have a skiff that tows these boats out of this area here, okay? So, you know, it tows these boats in and out of that basin. So I'll come back to that in a minute. So children's, you know, we got children in the boats. So in 2000, the club began looking into refurbishing the existing pier and deck, along with a way to consolidate the existing line of piled held floats in our boat basin with 2 long bottom anchored floats. We went through all the permitting agencies and, you know, we complied with all applicable standards in 2010. Considerable costs of approximately $2 million were funded by the yacht club in this process since inception, between engineering, consultant, permit application fees, tide water application, the list goes on, dredging projects. You know, I just want to nail down that this, if I may.
Go ahead.
I've been navigating this harbor for over 30 years. This is very misleading. Because of the extreme tides that we're seeing now, an 8-foot boat just barely goes through here with about maybe a foot or so. These sailboats come in a tow, and they come in our area configuration. And I can explain what that is. But they're using every bit of this area that we were approved for way back when we got R91. At dead low tide, a moon low, this whole dock is in our area of configuration. So I don't understand how is there another area of configuration within our area of configuration? Because what that means is that we can put piers that we have existing here if it suits the sailing program. We can reconfigure anything in our configuration area. So I'm curious also, why you need 120 feet of dock. Yeah, 180, excuse me. I just, it's a lot of area.
180 feet of floating dock.
Sir, when your area of configuration was decided or determined, does that take into account neighboring properties, or how is that determined?
It's based on longitude and latitude. And this, at one point, is 20 feet into our zone, and on 1.12, but most of it is all in our area. And the other thing, we just spent an exorbitant amount of money to dredge this whole outfit last year. So,
I'm sorry, when you say we, are you saying the Green Harbor Yacht Club or
Yes.
the town of Marshfield?
Yes, private.
We privately dredged this whole area. So at dead low tide, this is mud. Not only is it mud, we had strict order from the DEP to have a 25-foot slope from this area, and if we touched that mean low, we were in big trouble. So what that means to us is that not only are these docks in the mud, 6 feet away from that is mud. So at low tide, all these boats hypothetically will be sitting in the mud. And oh, by the way, yeah, well, that's all I have to say. I'm just worried about the kids, and there's no water there. And we weren't allowed to dredge anywhere near that line, so that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Thank you.
Name and address for the record.
Lori and Fred Sweeney, 119 Marginal Street. We're actually the neighbors of Colin Bono. We also own 0 Careswell Street, which is a parcel of salt marsh, assessors plot number M06-0803.
It's abutting the other one.
Abutting on here. Okay.
So, are you the owners of this other dock?
Our name is on there, Sweeney. We do not have a dock.
Oh, okay, thank you, sorry.
That's okay. In 2019, we pursued considering a dock ourselves. We engaged the services of John Zimmer, Bob Crawford, several others. Anyway, end of the story, we decided because of the conservation and the space, it was just too tight. There's not enough water there. I'm sorry, Colin. It's really tight. I think the dock you see going out at 122 Marginal Street there, it's very deceiving. There are times there's literally only a foot of water. And it does sit in the mud. So the other thing is, you're only allowed to have one float. I don't know why it's 3 floats. You're only allowed with DEP 1 float. So with the 1 float, you're not going to get to the high water mark. And you have to have 2.5 feet of water at all times. You can never be sitting in the mud unless you consider doing shoes or something like that. So that was one concern I had. The other was the zoning. You had it as an R3. Has that been corrected? It's actually a B4 within an R3. So the specifications should be amended to meet the B4?
It's actually a B3 business zone.
No, it's a B4 business waterfront zone. We just went through this with the zoning, the woman in zoning. I have it. Do you want to grab my folder? I have it.
I'm sorry, I'm a building commissioner, and it is a B3 business zone in that area.
It's a small pink area, correct? Just like Brant Rock, where the overlay is?
B4, correct, sorry.
Okay. Thank
B4, but
you.
it's not in an R3, it's a B4 zone. It's a business zone, it's not within an R3.
Okay, so that was my next question. So this engineering plan is based on an R3, not a B4, so it needs to be amended, number one, to reflect the B4, and the lot width would need to be 100 feet, which I do not believe that it is. I also do not think it would meet the setback to our property line, which I believe is 25 feet. The 2.5 feet on the water. And then my other question was, looking at this dock, it looks like it's more commercially designed. So is the intent for a commercial dock? And if so, the permitting, even from zoning, should reflect a commercial dock and not a residential dock, correct? Or state vice versa, it would state that it's a residential dock, because they're very strict about that when they issue a permit for residential. So, I had also submitted some concerns to conservation, and I'll give Colin a copy of that. And I will say, look, we live right across the street. We all love the water. We're all fortunate to live by the water. But there are definitely some concerns over there, and it's really the space. We just do not, if you can find your way out to high water. The other thing is dredging. If you wanted to do it, I think you would have to dredge, and that's a huge concern with DEP, and the cost is phenomenal, so.
Thank you.
I've always kept my boat at Taylor. No doubt.
We just think there might be other options rather than, just going down that path of not being realistic, and then, so, that's it for the Sweeneys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey guys, Paul DeFreitas, Edward Road. I'm actually on the board of directors as well for the Green Harbor Yacht Club. So a couple things I just wanted to add to Brian. Just so you guys would know, it's in the letter. The reconfiguration zone for us was approved by the Board of Appeals through special permit. It's on the letter, number 1948, issued on July 16, 2019 as well. And if you look, you'll see that it states that the reconfiguration zone that Mr. Bono's, his proposal plan is going to encroach about 20 feet on the northwesterly end and about southeasterly end by about 12 feet. So, I just wanted to make sure that we got that point across as well. And then it is our understanding that as a condition for granting of a special permit, a proposed activity is not to unduly subject a developed uses in the area to hazards affecting the general health, safety, or welfare of an existing use, which this project clearly does. That's all I had to say. Thanks.
Anyone else? Seeing that there's none.
Bob, do you have anything?
No. Seems like a large dock for a single-family house.
What was that, Bob?
Seems like a large dock for a single-family house.
Is there a reason you have 3 floats?
Yes, so namely to reduce visual impact, rather than keep it going straight out, I'm following the contour of the salt marsh.
Yeah.
And the second reason is, as I mentioned, Dave Hill over at DEP, he said that, the best way to get to water without dredging, squeezing in between that area of reconfiguration, which is pulled from Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute. That's where that data comes from. I pulled it right off their website together with the engineer. We designed it to fit in that area. He said, if it comes across my desk, that looks good. So he said, go out and then over to get to deep water.
So, your abutters, they have some issues with the access for their programs, which are, town programs now. So do you have any thoughts on that?
I can appreciate that. They just recently removed some of those fingers you see on the riverside. They had some pointing in. So with those missing, there's a lot more room to navigate in there, and if they were navigating with those in place, I don't see how that would interfere me having a structure there.
I mean, I live on that street
Sure.
too, and
Yeah.
that's extremely large for
Yeah.
that space over there. I'm
Right.
very familiar with it. And the other dock,
Mhm.
right next to it, I think it's 122, doesn't even come close to being out that far.
Yeah.
So I have some major concerns about, because my children take sailing lessons
Yeah.
there before. So it's really tight. So I have some serious concerns about the size of it and the need for that
It's
many
just
floats.
to get to deep water. That was the intention of it. It's not for business use or anything like that.
But at some point, you're not going to be in deep water. I mean, you're going to be in the mud.
So the area between where you see on the map, the tan area there,
Yeah.
and the blue area, which is deep water, their area of reconfiguration kind of hugs that pretty tight, but so it does hug it pretty tight, but there is a couple foot, it shows it even on their Chapter 91 license, which is filed. I also consulted that to design this, trying to be as delicate as possible to squeeze it in there, which I feel as if I did.
You feel, well, I did miss
As
it.
if I did that, I accomplished that by staying out of their area of reconfiguration and using the deep water that's available outside of the area of reconfiguration.
So keeping in mind the programs that go on there and what they were approved for and the dredging that they did and all that, you kept all of that in mind, or did you not know about all that?
Of course I knew about that.
I'm just
It was
asking.
happening right
Just
outside
wanted
my
for the-
window, yeah.
Well, I just wanted for the
Yeah.
record, it could have been prior to you
Yeah.
moving in
No,
there. I
yes,
mean, there's a
yeah.
million things that could have happened.
I saw
so
that.
Don't be
So
foolish.
historically, the Google Earth, I say for lack of a better term, views, the area doesn't really change. It's past that where the depths change. So that area is the area, the shoreline area there.
Anybody else? Yes.
How many boats do you plan on storing there?
I gotta work on the first one. So one.
One?
Yeah.
Colin, I'm no marine engineer, but when you say it doesn't change, that belies the permitting that we've had in front of us of the silting in of Green Harbor on a pretty regular basis and the need to dredge on a regular basis. And some of those hearings have been contentious, that when the harbor master's been in to dredge Green Harbor, and there have been other applicants in Green Harbor that have been in doing work on the water, and it's a tight area under the best of circumstances. It really looks as though this dock is being shoehorned into a spot, and I'm curious, did your engineer, Terrence Simon, did he consult with the permit from the Green Harbor Yacht Club when he was configuring your plan? Or
Yes.
When he was configuring your plan?
Yeah, no, I get what you mean. Yes, the Chapter 91 license that they have and all associated.
Because they're saying that
on
you're
that,
encroaching
yes.
onto their space. So I can't imagine an
So-
engineer is going to develop a
Right.
plan that calls for you to trespass.
Correct, no.
That's why I'm wondering, how do you
So the area
reconcile the two?
their area of reconfiguration was designed with, like I said, data from the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute for depths, NAVD 88 or something along those lines.
Okay, but Woods Hole isn't a plan that these folks, I'm sure, paid a fortune for and filed at the Registry of Deeds. So Woods Hole, that's pie in the sky.
Sure.
These guys have something that's on record at the Registry of Deeds, and to avoid litigation, your plan probably shouldn't trespass on their plan, and their plan shouldn't trespass on your plan.
Right. I can appreciate that. So on that plan right there, the image that was just up there, you could see that the mean low water 0, and their area of reconfiguration, which are those two lines, there's a couple foot section between those. So that's what Dave Hill basically told me. He said stay within that area, and he sees no issue with it.
Ma'am, would you like to say something?
Mary Beth Corbett. I live on Elmhurst Ave but I am also associated with the Green Harbor Yacht Club and have been involved with the dredging projects back in 2000, and then also in the most recent one. And I think the key here is that we have invested over $2 million, as Brian mentioned, of our private money to get that deep water there, which the petitioner wants to impede our use of and take advantage of. That's the long and the short of it. His key was, this is the only way I could do it without dredging. We had to dredge. If he wants to try to get his permits to dredge, that's a process that's available to him to try. But he is definitely encroaching on our usage of our property that has been permitted and approved. Thank you.
Tell me something real quick. With the area configuration that's coming out of the Green Harbor Yacht Club, how come it goes so far down? It seems to me you're landlocking other pieces of property that you're going in front of. How does that process work?
It was first approved by, it's covered by our 91 license from the state. Yep. And then was subsequently approved by this board as part of our plans and our redredging. Yeah.
But I mean, what would stop you from continuing down the river?
Well, we would have to go back,
landlocked more
we would
property?
have to go back to DEP.
Right. But where there wasn't a dock at this gentleman's property before, your permit allowed you to build docks in front of his property, correct?
That's our,
Yeah.
That's what? You said it was
Pardon?
your property? Yeah.
Sweeney, that's our lot. To the right of Collins.
Yep. So the Green Harbor dock goes in front of your property and also the applicant's property.
Right.
Correct?
Out into the
Yeah,
water. Nobody-
he does not own the water.
Yeah,
The
nobody
water
owns
is
the
owned
water
by
once
the
you're
state,
out there.
and the state
No,
gave us
I understand that, but
the license
you're
to use
utilizing
it.
the water that you don't own in front of his property, correct?
Right, under a valid license until
Sure.
2040.
Oh, I
Let me-
get it.
Can I just assume that if the state provided you with a 91 license, first time I've ever heard this, sorry, I grew up on a cattle farm, I didn't grow up around the water, so. That
Don't hold that
if,
against you, Mac.
if Mr. Bono has to apply for the same license, my assumption is that the state wouldn't allow it to overlap. Is that
Matt,
right?
I can explain the process a little bit if you'd like.
So, but my point is, whoever provides that licensing, from the state wouldn't allow two licenses to cover the same property? Is that right?
Right, but the petitioner doesn't have a
I know.
91 license
but
yet.
Not yet, but if.
Right, so I
So
just,
why wouldn't this be whoever controls the 91 license to figure this out?
well, I think Conservation Commission of this town is going to have a lot to say about it, too. That hearing was continued. But I think the focus of this board, really, under the special permit that's needed, should be the safety of existing uses under the statute. It was read into the record before, which you're well aware of.
Right.
Right.
So,
What is the safety issue?
The safety issue has been described.
Can
Yep.
you go back to, and I'll help you, Mary,
No, no,
I'll
go
help you, Mary Beth. Can you go back to the blueprint drawing? I know this is, kind of shows it too, but, so right here, right, so if you look at the scale, so right here, I think this was stated that this is 30 feet. Okay?
What's 30 feet?
From where where
Dock to
Mr.
dock.
Bono wants to put a dock,
Dock
and where
to
we
dock.
have a dock.
Yep.
Now, we have 4 sailboats, again, with children on them, and we have a 19-foot skiff that pulls those sailboats. He could be out in the ocean, but he could also have his boat docked here. Average 8.5 foot beam on a boat, 8.5 foot beam on another boat, that's 17 feet. Now you're left with how much? 13 feet. Take bumpers, that's another foot on each. Now you're left with 12. The boat's coming in 8-foot beam. Now you're left with 2 feet, 2 to 3 feet on either side of a boat that's docked, with 12 to 14-year-old kids learning how to sail safely, trying to get in and out of there. Can't happen. It won't. It's detrimental to this program that has employed Marshfield kids since the inception of this club, and it's brought revenue to the town as well. It'll cease to exist if that happens, because it's gonna become a problem that could, a kid could get hurt. And that's, I mean, I'm stating fact, 8-foot beam, 8-foot beam, 8-foot beam. 24 feet, and you have 30 feet of space, leaves you 6 feet of
Would
safe
eliminating the
space.
dock 3?
What's that?
Would eliminating the number 3 dock alleviate any of those issues for you?
I don't know.
No.
I mean, it looks like you substantially widened the pathway there.
Here to here, a similar issue?
Yes.
And then there's also boats that dock all on this side. correct?
Yes.
So what, there already is a safety issue.
No, it isn't, really. It's not. This is a whole different story, because you're gonna have 2 boats here. You have the space here. You don't have 2 boats here. You have 1. You don't have another one here, because this is open. You won't. You'll have, if you see, this is really where the tight space is. And then again, also, you have other boats trying to get in and out that are rightfully so in those docks.
So I have a question. What is the 17.5 and 14-foot deck out there? What is, that's pretty
look
big
at that.
out there. Like, what is that?
What's this distance?
That's about 12 feet at dead low tide. That, the bottom of that boat is in the mud at dead low.
Yeah.
We have,
You know, it looks like the same issue. And
it's a straight pass. Once you get through, it's a straight pass, and then you have the whole basin to turn around.
Right. They have to turn those boats around. They don't just go straight in and go one thing.
I mean, I don't know this at all. Can you go back to that picture? Is it within your chapter 91 license to move this dock? Oh, or would you have to reapply and like?
No, then we're in the navigable waters.
That's navigable.
Yeah. So we learned the reconfiguration zone the hard way. We misunderstood the rule.
Brian, can you come up to the mic, because people online won't be able to hear you?
So,
Brian, can you ask people to identify themselves when they're speaking? We don't
Yes.
really know.
So again, Brian Stack, I'm the dock master of the yacht club. For the past 5 years, you know, we're all volunteers, so we volunteer our time. And we had an anonymous call to the DP, and I talked to Dave Hill, and I didn't know what he was talking about, but once I understood it, we removed those piers straight away and are in compliance. But the idea is that we could take the remaining, any piers that we wanted and put them wherever we want in our zone. That's how I understood it from Dave Hill.
Thank you.
Let's continue.
Yeah, I'd like to get more information from the Conservation Commission. We have nothing from them.
Brian, can I,
Go
I
ahead.
just wanted to clarify a couple of things, if I could,
Sure.
especially from Matt, who seems like he's unfamiliar with the Chapter 91 process.
Thank you, Randy.
Got to learn sometime.
Yeah,
Yeah, so it's a unique situation here in Massachusetts. Whenever you're creating or putting a structure, doing any kind of dredging or digging in an actual waterway, that's considered property of the governor and the Commonwealth, and it's under the governor's ultimate authority. To issue licenses, grant licenses, they generally grant licenses for docks and piers for 30 years. Those licenses are amended over time. I know that the yacht clubs have been amended, like, I think 3 times to include the extra finger floats, to include the extra length down the Green Harbor River. And basically, they have to go through that state licensing, but at the very beginning of the whole entire process, they have to go through zoning process and a conservation process at the local levels. So for zoning, basically what they're asking is, basically, are we going to grant them a variance from the lot line portions of it, the fact that it's an accessory structure that's required to be 10 feet from a lot line, and we're going to be allowing it to be 5 feet from a lot line instead. I just want to clarify that it's 10 feet from the lot line for an accessory structure, which this is. And so the variance is for 5 feet and for going across the property line in the rear, which technically I believe that this is the mean low water line. And so once they get that variance and special permit from the ZBA, then they've completed the municipal zoning aspect of it. They then go to the Conservation Commission, okay? The Conservation Commission is the one that's gonna look at the impact of the resource area and the environmental impacts of it. Now, they have very specific rules about spacing of deck boards, how many floats you can have, where the dock needs to be positioned on the property. So just like with zoning, they have to ask for several variances from the Conservation Commission, which I know they are doing right now. However, they wanted, the Conservation Commission, they continued their hearing so that Colin could get them a little bit more information, but also that so that they could complete the municipal zoning aspect of it and make sure that we gave them a dimensional variance before the Conservation Commission issues a permit with a dimensional variance on it that may or may not get granted by the ZBA. So that's why the process really is designed to go through the zoning board first to get that dimensional variance, and then it will go through the Conservation Commission, the Mass DEP, the Division of Fisheries, Marine Fisheries, and ultimately the Governor's Office. So that really is the process for a Chapter 91 license and what they have to go through for a dock. This is just the first step.
Thank you.
So I would like to hear from the harbor master too, so I'm thinking maybe we should continue this.
Excuse me, may I ask a question?
Yep, come to the podium.
You got to come up to the podium and identify yourself.
Mrs. Sweeney.
Colin referred to speaking to Dave Hill at DEP. Do you have a DEP number?
Not yet.
Okay, because the conservation meeting last week was continued for one reason only. There was no DEP number at all. I spoke to the harbor master. The harbor master informed me that he had no idea of this dock, nothing happening. And I think that's the building inspector that's zooming in.
Building commissioner, yep.
Obviously, there's been several docks put in on Marginal Street, so we're all aware of what the process has been. And I can tell you that they really push strongly to have zoning and conservation go at the same time and have you apply for your DEP license. I can also tell you with the Wetlands Act for that particular marsh, which is 294.2, there is no person shall dredge there at the end of the marsh. So, sorry, I do disagree strongly with the building inspector.
Thank you. So I'm going to move that we continue.
Real quick, would you be willing to eliminate the third float into this application? I can understand from what's been pointed out by the Green Harbor Yacht Club, it does look like a pretty large dock for a residential dock. And
So
eliminating three looks to me like it would alleviate some of their concerns.
So, may I get up and address some of that? Okay, thank you. So, whoever the voice in the sky is.
That's Andrew.
Andrew, could you pull up the graphic that had the floats, the fingers this way, please?
He might not be able to hear you.
I couldn't hear you, Colin.
Oh, sorry, Andrew. Could you pull up the graphic that shows the fingers coming out towards my house, please? Thank you. You want me? I feel important now. So the congestion that they're talking about, I don't see how it's made any worse by my dock than these fingers coming out with boats pointed towards the land now, because they're even longer than they would be on the side, and they had to remove those because within your Chapter 91 license, you do have an area of reconfiguration, which you are allowed to move these floats around, but it has to stay within the square footage total dock space that was issued with the Chapter 91 license. And they could reconfigure it however they wanted to. They could draw, their name if they wanted to, but for whatever makes sense to them, in extending out this way, the outrage is, it's getting congested over here. That's making it more congested. So
Can you point to where your docks would planned on
Yeah,
that?
where would they?
So it would be followed, it's hard to see because it's high tide right here, but the contour of this, thank you, Andrew. So the contour of this is, you can start seeing, the ocean floor because, yeah, all the light gets absorbed before it hits the bottom, and that's why it appears black or blue. So this is, shallower water, not quite low tide yet, but it follows this contour, and I can't tell you exactly where because I don't have my engineering software. Yeah, sure.
Would that be 2.5 feet of water?
2.5 feet of water.
So my
At
assumption
low
is
tide.
that third
No,
float,
this will be.
Excuse me, you just have to come up to the microphone if you're going to speak, okay, sorry.
that third float is the only float that will be in deep water at all times. That's the only way you get access to deep water is that last float.
That's the intention, to get to the deep water, and that's
the
what.
only float you could actually park a boat on.
And that's what, right, and that's what Dave Hill, recommended. He said, go out and then go as far right as you need
Other
to.
two are just
to get
walkways to get to that third.
Right, and the intention was, like I said, to reduce the visual impact so that I don't have a big pier going all the way out. It was to follow the contour, so you don't have that in your line of sight.
I mean,
This could extend out. That's, I'm open to, change that around. I don't really have an issue with that, but it'd probably save me money in the long run doing that, but
You said you could extend out and eliminate docks, eliminate.
I could. But that's kind of what I was going to go through with conservation. For zoning purposes, I think it's kind of 6 one, half dozen the other. I'm doing the same thing zoning-wise.
really? Okay, Mrs. Sweeney?
I guess my question is Andrew, what's the
Can you
last
just
name?
identify yourself? 'Cause
Laurie
it's
Sweeney,
online.
119 Marginal Street and 0 Caswell Street.
Thank you.
Who is Andrew?
I'm Andrew Stewart. I'm the building commissioner and floodplain administrator for the town of Marshfield.
Okay, thank you, Andrew, I appreciate that. I agree, I think it should be a continuance with conservation, no doubt, and the harbor master. Because the harbor master has a totally different map if you look at the harbor. And he's got to consider all the moorings that are also out there. It's just not that one little piece of traffic going out there. And then also the question of, I believe the setback to our property is 25 feet, and that's from Mike DeMayo.
Thank you.
Okay?
So I'm going to move that we continue 2442 Colin Bono, 12 Caswell Street, to, when can we go to, Nancy?
Next meeting's July 9th.
How busy is that? Yeah. Let's go to the 8:13 meeting. 8:13? Yeah, go to 8:13. So I'll move that we continue this to 8/13/2024. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Larry Keane, aye.
Corbin, aye.
Brian Sullivan, aye.
Brian Murphy, aye.
Heidi Coney, aye?
Jean Lee, aye.
Mac Brothers, aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so now we have Kevin, 2443 Kevin Tonsberg and Shannon Walsh. The petitioners are seeking a special permit in accordance with 305-1012 of the Marshfield Municipal Code to construct a 10-foot by 20-foot addition and an 18 by 16-foot second-story garage addition on the property located at 193 Ocean Street, which is further identified on the assessor's maps as being on parcel number N070807, is located in the R3 zoning district. Name and address for the record.
It's Kevin Tonsberg, 193 Ocean Street.
Go ahead.
Shannon Walsh, 193 Ocean Street.
Do you want to explain your project?
Okay. Yeah, we're just looking to see if we can add, staying within the same footprint, but in making the front bedroom a little, bigger for us. We're trying to make this our forever home, basically. We're trying to move into the town of Kingston. Town of Marshfield. We live in Kingston now. And we're just looking to get rid of the contemporary look, make it more, I guess, that's how it looks right now with that picture. We're just trying to make it more, I guess, look like the rest of the houses in the neighborhood. And if you're walking down, we have a garage there, and we're just looking to put like an in-house, like an office workout area in the back, in the garage area there. We have, it's barely a two-car garage, and we're just looking to use it as a, for the backyard also.
Okay. So Andrew, could you kind of tell us, I already told us, but would you mind just explaining again what you see here?
Like I said, so for the house itself, they're not expanding any of the building area. It's a non-conforming house, non-conforming lot, and they're just altering and extending it. So that's why they're getting the special permit for the house. As far as the garage, there were a couple of issues I got. One was that the height, we don't really have plans for the height of it, and accessory structures can't exceed 20 feet in height. It looks like it's got dormers on both sides, and the mean height would have to be 20 feet, and we'd have to know that. Also, if you're going to be modifying this structure, especially along the rear of it, right now, I think this is the rear. You've got a window here. Because of its proximity to the lot line, it's only 1.5 feet. This would have to be a 2-hour rated wall if you're going to rebuild it, and you would not be able to have any windows along the rear of the building. That's a building code for proximity to lot line. But yeah, the height of the overall structure, and then decks over 4 feet aren't supposed to encroach the setback by more than half. So obviously you'd be adding a deck over 4 feet within that setback. So those are things that the board should consider.
Thank you.
The garage wouldn't be over 20 feet. It will be within the, under the 20-foot height, that's for sure.
Do you want to pull it back from the lot line so you can have
Well,
windows? and it
everything's
doesn't
there.
have
This
to
isn't
be-
something I'm adding. This is existing.
Oh, I know,
This-
but
yeah.
do you want to pull it back so you can have windows on that back wall?
No, I don't, the windows, that's just for aesthetics. I mean, the
And it's,
window.
and it's got to be fire rated,
Fire
which is a
rated, yeah.
pain.
Well, I
in the
mean,
ass.
it's what, if that's what it has to be, it has to be.
Okay.
I'm not worried about.
I'm not here to design
Yeah,
your project
yeah.
for you. It's, if you want the relief,
Mm-hmm.
you can pull it forward. Yeah, it looks like you've got the space on the lot. It's not an enormous lot, but
No.
you pull it forward a few feet, gives you a lot more ability to do things at less
Right,
cost.
so you're asking me to move the.
I'm not asking you to do
No, I'm just
anything.
saying, you're saying to move it.
Asking if you're okay with
No.
moving it, but
I would
it's
be
your
okay with.
decision, whatever you do.
I would be
It's
okay
your
with
house.
moving it. I just wanna, I mean, it just, because it's gonna be our home, and it's not big enough for just the two of us, and, we do have animals, and we do have.
So you're okay with where it's located?
I'm okay with where it's located, but if it's, but if I have to move it, because that's.
Well, I think, Andrew, with the decks and stuff, so would you have to figure that, we'd have to leave that open to you to figure that out, right? Like, we can approve it, but the decks and stuff would have to go through you to make sure they conform, correct?
I'm not following, Brian.
So if we approve this, we would have to have language in there for you to approve the decks or dormers, because, do you have a problem with that, or?
They're not asking for a variance. So they're going to have to comply with the law.
Can you put the plot plan up, Andrew?
The variance is kicking in from the height, correct?
No, the
And-
decks.
and the decks on the side?
The decks are where Andrew had a question. They're over 4 feet in height, so then they count in the
open decks over 4 feet in height may only encroach the setback by 1/2. Now, decks on primary structures can only go halfway into the setback, so 15 foot into the rear, 7.5 into the side. Anything beyond that would require generally a variance. Now, here we have a pre-existing non-conforming structure that they're gonna, well, because it's a pre-existing non-conforming accessory building, I should say, and they want to expand and alter that pre-existing non-conforming accessory building. They want to add a second floor, and they want to add these decks. So that's up for the board to determine whether or not you guys feel they need a variance for that, or whether this is an extension and alteration of a non-conforming structure under 10.12.
So we'd have to see.
Bob?
I think it's a special
It's
permit.
just,
They're already inside the setbacks, so I think it's a special permit, not a variance.
Okay. So we can allow the decks?
I think what you ought to do, if you're inclined to approve it, is to approve it subject to the requirement that they comply with the height requirements of the bylaw, and allow Andrew to guide them through what's permissible in terms of what they can do on the height.
Okay.
And they could revise the plan, Andrew could get the revised plan before he issues the building permit.
All right. Any other questions from the audience? Board? Seeing that there's none, I move that we close 2443 Kevin Tonsberg and Shannon Walsh, 193 Ocean Street. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Larry Keane, aye.
Grover Hensey, aye.
Brian Sullivan, aye?
Brian Murphy, aye.
Heidi Conway, aye.
Jean Lee, aye.
Mac Brothers, aye.
And I move that the board vote to grant a special permit, subject to the conditions. If approved, this project will require 2 separate building permits and a certificate of occupancy for each structure, as the garage will have habitable space above. And so what do I say? The decks will be reviewed by Andrew? Bob?
How do you
In
frame
the
No, I
20
think the height of the
Conditions, garage
garage,
must comply with the 20-foot height restriction.
yeah, and I think Andrew can work with them to show them what's permissible.
All right. In accordance with 305-1012, to construct a 10-foot by 20-foot addition and an 18-foot by 16-foot second-story garage addition on the property located at 193 Ocean Street, located in the R3 district, as shown on a set of site plans dated, I can't see.
5/23/2024.
5/23/2024. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Larry Keane, aye.
Grover Hensey, aye.
Brian Sullivan, aye?
Brian Murphy, aye.
Heidi Conway, aye.
Jean Lee, aye.
Mac Brothers, aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Now we have 2445, Angela Griffith. Come on up. The petitioner is seeking a variance in accordance with 305-1011, a relief from 305-601, applicability of dimensional and density regulations, and a special permit in accordance with 305-1012 of the Marshfield Municipal Code to extend and rebuild an existing 6-foot by 16-foot 2 by 29-foot 4 by 22-foot 4 by 2-foot 1 by 14-foot 7 by 14.7 by 15.5 by 12 by 3.5 wraparound second-story deck on the property located at 8 Water Street, which is further identified on the assessor's maps as being on parcel N050311 and is located in the R3 zoning district. Go ahead.
Ryan Taylor from Stenbeck and Taylor, representing the clients. The property is located on the corner of A Street and Water Street. A Street is when you're going into Bluefish Cove from by the trailer park, Blackman's Trailer Park. It's the washboard road that brings you in. It's the main access. Water Street is the one that turns to the north and goes to the toward the ocean. Sorry, to the south and toward the ocean. The existing property is a 2-story single-family residence. There's a garage on the first floor, also a bedroom and a den and a bathroom The second floor has the main part of the living area, consisting of the kitchen, the master bedroom, a living room, and some other rooms. Right now, the only access for the property is, the second floor of the property, is via the staircase that's shown encroaching on the Water Street property line. That existing staircase encroaches by about 4/10, 5 inches, into the street line. It's notable, though, if you look on the plan, the dashed edge of road line is considerably outside of the property line. Down in pretty much all of Bluefish Cove, the roads aren't exactly within the roadway layouts. So in this case, the proposed work, what we're proposing to do is add a wraparound second-story deck with a staircase accessible from the parking area on the north side of the house, which would allow access up the staircase shown on the north side, around the proposed deck that wraps around on the street side, on the A Street side, and continues to wrap around to the whole end of the south side of the house. That provides a secondary access staircase at the rear of the property. So the goal is to provide 2 points of access for safety to the second-story part of the house. The new work, we kept everything on the proposed deck inside the confines of the property line, insofar as possible and practical. Andrew can confirm that the code requires us to have at least a 36-inch passageway at the choke point of the corner of the house, the southerly corner of the house, and the outside of the new deck. So that part of our deck is going, a small part of our deck is going to continue to be in that same 4/10 or 5-inch offset overhang into the street layout.
Can you say that again, Brian's moving?
A portion of the deck, so I know there's a lot of lifting on this little piece of land. So what happens is a portion of the second-story deck now protrudes into the street layout by 4/10. Again, it's a second story.
And that's town property? Is that what you're saying?
It's a private way, so both A Street and Water Street they're not public ways, they're private ways.
Okay,
So it projects 4 inches into the street line.
okay.
The actual traveled way is like 12 feet further out from that.
Okay.
And in between, in that area between the house, there's a fenced area, fenced yard area, there's a 12-inch diameter tree, there's a copious amount of wild rugosa growing. So in other words, the roadway's never going to change, the location will never change. It's been this way for 100 years. I checked the 48 aerials that we have, and it was that way then. So what happens is, in order to make the 3-foot requirement for passageway for an access way, the deck has to continue to stick out into the street layout, second story, by the same 4/10 that's presently intruding into the setback, or into the layout. So there'll be no obstruction, no change to the traffic patterns, no obstruction to any residents or anybody using it for access. The physical access, we submitted photographs, and you look at the photos and you can see right at that corner, you can see the second-story deck above, there's a 12-inch diameter deciduous tree, and there's all kinds of plantings and shrubs, and there's a fenced yard.
So are there going to be 3 stairways now? Or are you taking one of the stairways
We're taking one of the
out?
stairways out. There'll
Taking
be
the
2.
existing one out and adding 2?
Exactly, and they'll be conforming with the present.
One on that
One on
north
the-
side and
yeah.
one on that, what is it, east side?
Exactly, one on the north side and one on the east side.
Why don't you put the stairway inside the house?
There's not enough, we submitted the architecturals, if you look at the architectural, it's a small house, there's not enough real estate in the house.
Yeah, I understand it's a small house, but you're also asking for a variance, and it's a variance that's not even on your property.
Well, that's true, and if it weren't for the fact that the existing deck is pre-existing non-conforming since the beginning of time, then I'd strongly suggest that maybe we should look at an alternative. It seems reasonable because it's always been there. And further, the travelway is nowhere near the street line, and likely never ever would be.
Yeah,
Photographs might help.
I've
You want me to show you those?
I've looked at the aerial photographs, I've looked at the plans, I've looked at the schematics that you submitted from Custom Home Designs. I mean, there's a way to do this without a variance. I don't see that you meet the standard for the granting of a variance personally, but that's nothing new.
Anyone else?
But the way to avoid the variance would be putting the stairway inside the home, correct?
Configuring the stairway inside the dwelling.
Yeah, but doing that, it is very small. It's Chet's old house, so it's a very small house, and what they have there is already there. The layout of the roadway is substantially away from it.
But the hardship can't be to the homeowner. The hardship has to be to the lot, specific to the lot.
It is.
I think
It's a very
The
unique
lot is,
lot.
the lot is small, but, I mean, it's a neighborhood of small lots.
But could it be
And
unique?
this situation existed when they purchased the property.
I thought that was one of the most obvious ones we checked is unique topography. I mean, everything down in Bluefish Cove, honestly, we have done variances. We've been 73 years in business, and we've done plenty of variances because you have no
I'd be
choice.
willing to bet anything you do down there is in the same scenario.
It's going to be a variance, yeah.
The roadway, none of the roads are where they're supposed to be. They're all over the place. That's by the way they've traveled all these years.
So, other than moving it inside the house, which is clearly not, is there any other way to reconfigure it so that it doesn't do this?
Well, the desire was to provide two points of access,
Right,
because this is pretty much the living quarters of the house.
Right.
So if there's a fire,
right.
you want to be able to Dixie down the back staircase or down the front staircase. That was the idea. So that's what caused. And the only thing that's causing us to maintain that setback is because the state building code says we have to have 36 inches between the house and the rail. If we could narrow that down to 30 inches, I wouldn't even be here.
Brian, can I make a quick comment?
Yes, please.
So they have a floodplain permit for this. Part of the floodplain permit is I make the zoning determinations, or as far as what permits they need. I never told them they needed a variance. I told them they only needed a special permit because this is essentially an extension and alteration of an existing non-conforming deck and an existing non-conforming house. It already encroaches all these setbacks all over the place. So you're just extending and altering an existing non-conformity. You're not issuing a dimensional variance here.
Okay, so they don't need
Thank
the
you.
variance.
So also, like, even if we said yes, you have to go to the select board, because they would have to, right? It doesn't it? Do you have to if
don't know,
it
Bob.
goes over the
It's a
town?
Well, I don't know, this is not a public way?
No, it's a private way. I have
He
the,
owns,
Who owns
he owns
it?
halfway to the midpoint of the road.
He does, but it's subject to the rights of others to pass and repass through it. But, you know,
Who owns it?
throughout Brant Rock, there's a number of paper streets, and people have fenced them off and blocked them and put houses on them, and they've probably extinguished people's rights by adverse possession. And if this house has been in that location for this many years, probably a pretty good chance they've gained some rights to keep it there. So
Plus
it's probably
up
okay.
high,
It's
right?
probably okay.
So they don't have to go to the select board?
No.
Well, who owns that area?
Well, we don't know that the town is the owner of the layout of the road.
I took the Marshfield Street Directory. I can submit that.
It's not on the list.
It's a street directory, it tells the streets that are owned by the town.
And then I just want to point out that the deck is not going to go, it's going to be over this existing concrete patio that they're already using that's fenced in on their quote-unquote property.
I don't know how long it's been there, but I think you can allow them to do the
I
special
think we
permit.
can allow it too, so.
If somebody wants to challenge it, they're free to challenge their rights.
Any other questions from the board?
I mean, the firefighter in me says a second point of egress is key. I've pulled too many bodies out of buildings to not want that.
Any other questions from the audience? Seeing that there's none, I'm gonna move that we close. Heidi?
2445?
Angela Griffith.
8:40.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Larry Keane, aye.
Brian Sullivan, aye?
Ryan Murphy, aye.
Heidi Conway, aye?
Jean Lee, aye.
Mac Brothers, aye.
I'm gonna move that the board vote to grant special permit, special permit, subject to the conditions. What's needed, an as-built, Andrew, and can't see anything?
Compliance with the floodplain bylaw, a certified as-built, and a certificate of occupancy.
Adapting what Andrew said. In accordance with 305, 601, and 1011. Oh, special permit conditions in accordance with 305-1012 to extend and rebuild the existing 6-foot by 16-foot 2 by 29-foot 4 by 22-foot 4 by 2-foot 1 by 14-foot 7 by 15-foot 5 by 12 by 3.5 feet wraparound second story deck on the property at 8 Water Street located in the R3 district as shown on a set of site plans dated 5/1/24 by Stenbeck and Taylor. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Larry Keane, aye.
Brian Sullivan, aye.
Brian Murphy, aye.
Heidi Conway, aye.
Jean Lee, aye.
Mac Brothers, aye.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Thanks, guys.
Good evening.
Good luck.
Good luck, have fun. So,
Now I need a loan.
all right, so, is that everything?
Yep, see ya.
So what time is it?
8 o'clock.
7:58. 8 o'clock. Does anyone want to work on the 40B?
Well, you're only going to have one more meeting
No,
before
7 o'clock.
the deadline. There was based on a conversation that you and I had, I did reach out to the applicant's attorney.
Yeah.
And I asked them for an extension, and they provided an extension through July 12th
Okay.
to file the decision. But if you try to do this all on the 9th, you're going to be here till the wee hours of the morning, so you ought to start looking at it.
Get the nuts and bolts out of the way first.
Bob, there was a special town meeting last night.
You can't consider anything that happened at that special town meeting.
Because that meeting was closed.
The article sought to direct you to contact the DEP and ask that they provide some input prior to the issuance of any permits or approvals. And your public hearing is closed, so you cannot consider any aspect of what occurred last night.
I was not at that meeting. Did anyone advise the people that were there that this board cannot consider that vote?
Yes, I did.
Thank you.
So apparently, does anyone want to work on this? Andrew, do you have that we can pull up the stuff Bob sent, or?
So just so you know, Ed Pesci just sent some comments to a draft a few minutes ago, and I think Ed Pesci's on the line. Ed Pesci did attend the meeting last night. He answered one question, but he just sent some additional comments. I haven't incorporated them in because they just came in a few minutes ago.
Hi, everybody.
Hey,
Ed.
As Bob said, I did attend last night. It was well-attended, and, who knows, the town, on behalf of other boards, may ask DEP for their determination or for their opinion. But I did review the decision, the draft decision that Bob circulated. I did see some brief minor comments from Pat Brennan earlier today. And then I started reviewing this over the weekend, and I finally finished it this afternoon, and I wanted to get out my quick edits. So I did a red line strikeout version. It's in blue, Bob's are in red, so you can keep them straight, but virtually all of my comments are pretty minor. Most of the comments are pretty minor. They're more typos, with one exception, and that was for wastewater treatment. So I went and called out the type of wastewater treatment that the applicant is proposing. I called out the requirements under the provisional use approval that DEP has provided for that technology, and the testing requirements that are involved, and asked them to, I'd like you to consider, instead of a 1-year duration of having a contractor, qualified contractor, perform O&M and testing and reporting to DEP, but they extend that to 3 years to both report to the zoning board and the Marshfield Board of Health. So I felt it was appropriate to both agencies. The reports that they would send to DEP, they send to both the zoning board and to the Marshfield Board of Health. So
Ed, aren't they required with DEP and their conditional approval, aren't they required to test quarterly and report their findings to DEP?
I quickly, yes, so they are required to do, I'm digging it out now, they are required to do a number of different testing efforts. It's field testing, it's O&M, it's wastewater performance before and after the treatment. I read through it really fast and I didn't get complete clarity on how many months or how frequent it is, other than a period of 1 year is required. There's an initial discussion about the first 60 days, and I actually gonna go over with a consultant of mine just to make sure I'm reading it correctly. So I decided not to specifically state that, but state that the required testing and reporting that they have for DEP, they must also report to the zoning board and to the Board of Health.
Yeah, I think
So that
that's
covers
completely
you.
reasonable, yeah.
Right, it covers you, and then I'm going through the same review type effort with the Martha's Vineyard Commission on another project for the Martha's Vineyard Hospital, and the MVC required a 3-year period, so I thought, okay, 3 years is more than 1 year, it adds some comfort and confidence in the performance, operation, and characteristics of that treatment system. If the board thinks this is too excessive, I would recommend at least 2 years.
I think 3 years is reasonable. Anybody else?
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
I think so too.
Is there a reason
Unless
why? I'm sorry. Is there a
I was gonna
reason?
say, unless I hear from the contrary from the applicant, I would say 3 years is something you should stick with.
Thank you.
That's my question.
Andrew, do we have Ed's most recent email that we can pull up, or did you send it to Andrew as well, Ed? I mean, I haven't.
I can save it and email it to Andrew, and then
You
You want to send it to me real quick, Ed? I don't have it.
No, I responded to
Bob has it, he can send it.
Bob's,
Just
right.
give me 1 second, I'll send it to Andrew. This is
I got it. I'm sending it to him now. Got it already.
Okay.
I just responded to Bob's email, which had a number of folks on it, including the planning staff, town manager, and select board.
Now, I know that we're closed, but now that Ed is bringing up water testing through the DEP, can we take that into consideration?
No.
What type of?
I mean, the board is deliberating. and
Yep.
You have the right to speak with counsel and your consultants to assist you in your deliberations.
Okay.
But there shouldn't be any new information, and your deliberations should be confined to the record. Anything that got submitted, anything that you heard during the testimony, and any of the documents that are included in the record.
Got it.
Right, this is purely out of the DEP provisional use approval from May of 2020 for this technology, and all I do is look at what was the requirements and decided to make it 3 years instead of 1 year, just an additional condition that I wanted the board to consider.
Where do you want to go from here?
We'll just roll through it.
Well, what are you going to start with? Right at the beginning, or
Yeah.
just the application part of it and what has changed?
Yeah.
Or go right to the waivers, or just,
Well, let's go to,
what do you think we should start with, Bob, to have it be like? Because I have some things that I
Well,
have.
there's some things that, when you take a vote on a 40B project,
Yep.
there's some required findings, and there's some low-hanging fruit that we can
do
probably
tonight.
get at, okay? And the low-hanging fruit are some of the jurisdictional elements that you're required to make a finding on. So perhaps what we could do is we could look at the sections dealing with the governing law, which begin on page 3 and 4.
Yep.
And the jurisdictional findings that begin on page 5 and extend through 7. And then maybe it makes sense to even talk about the project description and impacts, which begin on 7.
okay,
So
so we can all read that.
Nancy, do the board members have a copy of the written one? Or is it just the online version?
For,
Could we make,
yeah, which
Your
one do you
draft?
want me to make?
Your draft here?
well, Ed's version has his comments through today.
Oh,
That's what
So-
I'm looking at.
Is it on your,
You have it on yours? Oh, you
I
have
have
it
it
pulled
on
up
my
on the
computer.
email.
It's right there.
your
And it's right here.
latest email?
Well, I mean, it's,
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
want me to print the latest email and
I
Ed's?
need binoculars.
like, what the?
Yeah, they have Bob's comments and my comments, so you see what's changed from the
Yeah,
original.
we can
version.
read through that, so.
Ed, can you send that to me too, please?
I think I did,
Okay.
yes.
All right, so why don't I summarize it for
Yeah,
you?
but I will.
and
Okay,
you
because
can
I'm like,
ask
this is gonna
questions.
take forever doing it
How's
this
that?
way. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just going to talk about Section 3, beginning on page 3 in governing law. So as we know, this is a project that was submitted to you under Chapter 40B, Sections 20 to 23, and the regulations promulgated by the former DHCD, which is now known as the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, and those regulations are at 760 CMR 56. And those are the regulations that govern the conduct of a local board's hearing, what you can consider, the burdens of proof, things of that nature. So the next paragraph, B, is a summary of what the act is specifically promoting. And it talks about some of the limitations and powers of a town when it faces an application like this. So the purpose of the act, and this comes from case law, not only by the Housing Appeals Committee, but the Supreme Judicial Court, this act, by its terms, promotes regional distribution of low and moderate income housing, and it specifically prevents cities and towns from using zoning to block construction of housing. And the purposes of the act are satisfied if the town has reached 10% of its total number of year-round housing units that are affordable to someone that earns 80% of the area median income. If a town has low or moderate income housing on sites comprising 1.5% of the town's total land area that's zoned for residential, commercial, industrial use, or if the application results in the commencement of a low and moderate income housing construction on sites comprising more than 3% of such total area or 10 acres, whichever is larger in 1 year. So remember, this project actually was filed with the board back in 2016 and approved in 2017. When the project was originally filed, it was filed as a 40-unit project with 355,000 cubic yards of material plus being removed, multi-years of site processing that were going to occur on site. During the public hearing process, the applicant, not the board, reduced the project to 20 units, but did not further reduce the earth removal. And the board granted an approval with some pretty stringent conditions. And those stringent conditions, the most important part, in my view, was the fact that we said any money yielded from the sale of the earth from this site has to be placed in escrow, because the applicant at the time was proposing to finance the project, but mostly to build it with the money to be gained from the sand. And if he took the sand out and spent the money and didn't build the project, we felt as a board that it defeated the entire purpose of the project. So the other condition that was really important to the board at the time, and the planning board at the time, and some abutters, particularly a family by the name of Little, who designed a really neat model, was the amount of earth removal that was coming out. The board basically said, if you can demonstrate to the board satisfaction that you can't build this project without removing 355,000 cubic yards, then you can remove 355,000 cubic yards. But they wanted a revised plan submitted proving that. And just so the board knows, we had a appeal filed by Mr. Armstrong. We actually tried the case for 4 or 5 days at the Housing Appeals Committee. And at the conclusion of Mr. Armstrong's case, I moved for summary decision because I didn't believe that he demonstrated that the conditions that we imposed rendered the project uneconomic. Before the Housing Appeals Committee rendered a decision, Mr. Armstrong signals his intention to sell the property. And he, in fact, has agreed to sell the property, although he hasn't sold it. And a new developer has submitted a amendment, and the proceedings at the Housing Appeals Committee were terminated with the understanding that they would come back to the board for an amended project, and essentially the review would start ab initio again. So this is technically an amendment to a comprehensive permit because there was one granted with approvals before. But when you change a project in the manner in which this applicant has changed the project, it's considered a substantial modification, and you basically start the process all over. And every aspect of this project has changed. The original units were 20 apartment units. There were septic systems. There was significant earth removal. Now there's more units, less earth removal. But these are all substantial changes. So what you heard basically is a complete new project. The rules that apply to this project were the rules that were in effect at the time the applicant originally filed back in 2016. Not the rules that are in place today, local, state, or federal. However, the applicant has asked for waivers, including waivers of requirements that have been adopted by the town since. The applicant, as I understand it, alleges that its project complies in every respect with all state and federal rules and regulations. They have asked for waivers of some local rules and regulations, but not all rules and regulations. And one waiver they have not asked for is a water resource protection district limitation on 5, I think it's milligrams per liter of nitrogen, because they have developed, I guess, consultation with their experts, a potential septic system plan here that meets not only the local requirements, but I think it meets it by more than 40%, and then it clearly complies with state standards, and there are no federal standards for the disposal of wastewater and nitrogen loading. And that's a water resource district standard. There were no rules in effect at the time this application came in relating to PFAS. There is one local regulation that has been adopted since, which basically is a requirement that the Board of Public Works be notified of any project that involves an alteration where, I guess there are PFAS chemicals or certain PFAS chemicals, a explanation of what those products are. A work plan is supposed to be provided that describes how they can prevent or minimize the amount of PFAS that could potentially get into the groundwater. And there's a couple of other elements of it, but that's the substance of that regulation. They have submitted a request for a waiver from that. The board's decision that you have in front of you incorporates the requirements of that local bylaw, because the applicant indicated during the public hearing process that they were willing to supply a list to the extent that that list could be provided. And I think what you'll have to decide would be, are you going to impose some conditions that there be a work plan intended to reduce PFAS that could get into the ground during construction? I'm not sure that there's any way, anywhere, to prevent PFAS that's located in ordinary household products from getting into the groundwater, because we don't do that anywhere, and we don't enforce it with anywhere.
So if we have, can I just interrupt to ask a
Yep.
question? So if there's PFAS in the water or the wells or whatever right now
Yeah.
in Marshfield,
There is.
okay. So is there a system in place to filter that or clean that up that we should be putting into this? Or, I haven't heard of it, no, I don't remember anybody saying that, so.
The Board of, you'll remember, the Board of Public Works, on their own, engaged environmental partners
Yeah,
to, I think the initial thought was they were studying the whole aquifer, but actually what they were charged to do was to study the impact of this project and not look at the aquifer as a whole. And they came up with a couple of conclusions, and the presentation was the presentation that was given to you, and I think they agreed that the nitrogen loading aspect of this septic system is, can be conditioned to meet the requirements of our local bylaw, and it exceeds them, actually, and I think they made some suggestions for conditions. As it relates to PFAS, the consultant confirmed that there is no federal or state regulation that regulates the amount of PFAS in wastewater. And it's your memory of what the presentation was, not mine, that governs. So what I'm saying to you, please check with your own memory of the whole situation, but they evaluated that groundwater did not flow directly towards the wells, and it flowed towards the north or the northeast under ordinary conditions, which was not in the direction of the wells. But in order to be conservative, they assumed that the wastewater was flowing to the north. And I guess if we had a drought that lasted 180 days, and I think Ed Pesci could probably confirm this, my understanding is there's a possibility that the wells would draw water from this entire area, and in that circumstance, the flow of groundwater could go more directly towards the wells. And assuming there was a future standard of 4 parts per trillion, there was a statement made that it, and I can read it to you because I've heard it a little differently from people that are re-describing it, but let me just explain it as in their words. They say, and this is words from their presentation, relatively low concentrations of PFAS in discharged wastewater may result in PFAS compounds reaching the Ferry Street and Church Street wells at concentrations exceeding combined PFOA and PFOS drinking water standards of 4 nanograms per liter. There is a current federal standard for PFOA and PFOS in drinking water, and when that standard is reached, a community has to treat its drinking water and impose, they have to filter their water and remove the PFOA or PFAS. So, but that's what they said in their recommendations. Their recommendations was, it says Title V does not require sampling of PFAS, nor is there a wastewater limit for PFAS currently. We recommend that mitigation measures for potential PFAS impacts to PWS wells be addressed prior to approval of the Bridle Crossing development. Those were the 2 recommendations they made. So I think most of what we have in our local bylaw is probably not unreasonable, except my memory was that we heard that the applicant checked with their major lumber supplier and their lumber suppliers list doesn't include information about what materials contain PFAS. But I assume that there are plenty of projects that do. So I know I've kind of talked a lot about things, but that's what I think you should be prepared on it. On that governing law section, subsection 3, there are a number of safe harbor provisions under which a board has the authority to delay or reject a proposed project. None of the safe harbor provisions, according to the town planner, are applicable. Subparagraph D talks about the fact that what this is, it's an amended project, and the issuance of an amended permit has to balance the regional need for low and moderate income housing against the town's long-range planning goals and local requirements. And to the extent that those are applied equally to subsidized and unsubsidized housing and valid concerns about health and safety of residents, these are the balancing figures. If a town doesn't have, if it hasn't reached these thresholds, there's a presumption that there's a substantial need in the region for affordable housing that outweighs local concerns. So some of these things are somewhat familiar to the board, at least those of you that have sat through prior 40Bs. The law says that our local concerns are outweighed by the regional need for affordable housing, and the burden shifts to the town to prove that these local concerns outweigh the regional need for affordable housing. And when you talk about regional housing, we're not talking about Marshfield or all the progress we've made, because we've made more progress than anybody towards affordable housing. You've approved 2 projects in the industrial park, but if you add Marshfield and you add Duxbury and you add Situate and Norwell and Hanover and all those other communities, some of which haven't made as much progress, that's the region that you're being compared against. So even though we're just Marshfield, that's what the region is. So when we've had appeals concerning these matters before, and a town says, geez, we built all this, we've made all this progress, the Housing Appeals Committee says, you're doing great, but guess what? It's not just Marshfield what we're concerned with. We're looking at the South Shore. And there are communities like Plimpton, Halifax, that have less than 1% of their housing that are affordable, and we get lumped in with them, even though, we're a much higher factor. So, again, that's the backdrop against which you have to decide this matter. I scratched out some things that were in our prior decision that I think are no longer relevant, but I think it's impossible for the board not to conclude that we haven't met these criteria, because the town planner assures us that we have not. So that's kind of a synopsis of section 3. The jurisdictional findings are elements that every board that considers a 40B in the Commonwealth has to find.
Bob, I'm agreeing with everything that you're saying.
Yep.
So how do we move the ball down the field?
Okay. Well, again, all of the factors that are in the jurisdictional elements, you actually would have to make a finding if, provided you agree with them all.
Each one?
Well, I would do it as a whole.
Okay.
So
Like he
when
said.
it came down time to a vote, and I'm not suggesting you have to do it now,
Right.
you'd probably say, I'd like to move that the board approve or deny, whatever you decide to do, the jurisdictional elements of findings. Okay? So,
Because I agree. I think they meet all the requirements for a 40B. I believe that, their application is complete. They've made a complete and thorough presentation. From my perspective, I'd want to move on, say yes to all of this. Let's get to their list of waivers.
okay.
That's just me, so
I
I'm
understand.
not, you're the boss.
So pretty much we're saying with this, that they've met the criteria for 40B through the town planner's perspective, that we don't meet the criteria of the 10% and the 1.5%, that it is an acceptable 40B project.
The safe
Yeah,
harbor.
remember, these are not our standards, these are the state standards.
State standards.
And they're the threshold things that they have to meet before they can be eligible to get a comprehensive permit.
So even
We
though
can-
we may not agree with it, or the way they're doing it, it
If we
still is
agree-
what we have.
The law says that you have to consider these things, and if they've met them,
Right, okay.
there's a regional need for affordable housing.
For the record, I don't like how they do it.
So I guess the next thing you could just look at quickly are project description and impacts. I tried to summarize what this project is all about for you, including the number of market rate and affordable units, how many bedrooms, how many buildings. There are some garage buildings. Kind of explained the layout using the last revised plan. Described the property. All of those things are kind of pretty straightforward. The project is accessed off of Ferry Street. Describes the neighborhood, former landfill to the south, the town of Marshfield's salt shed facility, where they also store other types of materials and dredge spoils, the existence of a haul road. The site is mapped priority habitat or estimated priority habitat of the eastern box turtle. And this applicant will have to get a conservation and management permit under the Division of Fishery and Wildlife's Conservation Management Permit Program, which is administered by the NHESP, Natural Heritage Endangered Species Program. When the matter was originally before us, they had like a draft permit. I don't know that they've ever proceeded beyond that, but that'll be a permit they have to get, and they'll have to do something to mitigate against the impact of the habitat that they are impacting. Density, I think we've talked about. Traffic, obviously there was some concern about traffic associated with the project. You have to decide whether the impacts are properly explained and have been mitigated, but you had a traffic engineer do a peer review study, and you'll probably remember the results of that. Mr. Pesci, Mr. Brennan, Mr. Eichner have all studied the impact of drainage and utilities, the stormwater impacts. We'd spent a lot of time talking about earth removal, and this applicant has reduced it down, I guess, to 125,000 cubic yards. They originally proposed 150,000. They're not proposing any on-site processing, so the material will be trucked off. We had conditions in the earlier permit that limited the number of truck trips and required a bond in case there was any type of off-site damage, and it required street sweeping. Then there's the wastewater impacts, what we've already been talking about. And then we get into the findings, and findings begin on page 10, and they concern all those things I've just talked to you about. The last thing you do is make a decision. The conditions of approval, if there's an approval, begin on page 13. And the waivers are contained in a chart, and you'll have to decide the waivers. Ed Pesci added some conditions relating to the wastewater. I didn't have a chance to add anything that Pat Brennan provided you today. I think there needs to be some more discussion about and deliberation about PFAS and PFAS requirements and monitoring. Taking into account everything that you've heard from the experts. It sounded to me like the applicant was willing to do something in that regard anyways. The earth removal conditions that are included here, these are the same type of earth removal conditions we've been put in every 40B project that the board has had for the last 15 years. And there's some miscellaneous requirements. The waivers begin on page 28. And just so you know, we have an introductory paragraph that's standard in every 40B decision, says that unless we specifically waive a section, it's not waived, and everything else applies. We rely upon the applicant to give us the waivers that they're actually seeking, and if they don't, then they're imposed and they got to comply with it. The only thing we do is we add a chart on the right-hand side saying what the ZBA vote would be if you want to approve it. Whenever waivers have been granted in the past, unless it's a procedural requirement, we usually just limit it to an approval that is connected to the revised plans. And, there's some statutory appellate language at the end. The only thing that we would have to add to the decision would be a file inventory. And Nancy's been really good about adding everything that has come in to the website. And I think we just need to create a list and append that as an attachment to the decision. And then after you've considered all of the waivers and made your findings and you're satisfied with the decisions, then you take a vote on the overall project.
So we had some things that I had originally said I wanted to get back to, which was one of the things that Greg had put in about, like the dog park, the dog walkway, the playground, that kind of stuff. Where would that come into play? They said they wanted to put a garden, which is, I thought was actually kind of fresh, but where would that come into? Because,
You would probably add a condition
okay,
or a
there's no
general.
place for kids to go over that area at all, safety-wise. If you're gonna have 3 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms, there's gonna be some families there.
You would probably put that in a general condition that in the revised plans, which will go to Andrew, if there were approval, they'll include those elements. The board has spoken, when you make a decision, and if it were to be an approval, the board is not supposed to reserve for itself the right to decide matters of material things. You're supposed to actually give it to Andrew, or you're supposed to give it to Mr. Pesci, or you give it to another board with particular experience. You can give that back to other boards. So that's what I'd probably tell you to do. So you'd just make a general condition that said, in the final plan shall be revised to include a recreational amenity, including a dog park or a playground.
Just whatever Greg had put in, just for, just because we've talked about that before at all the 40Bs about having someplace. Every single one we've done, it's been part of it, and it wasn't something we just passed on. It was a conversation.
Yeah. Yep, I mean, the last 2 projects you've had are much larger than this, and they have swimming pools and community buildings
Right.
and recreational facilities. This is
But in the absence of
only
that,
about a
right,
quarter of the size of those, so.
right, I get it. But in the absence of it, with the $100,000 thing we're taking
the-
out, yeah.
You may view the proximity to the bridle path as a good thing, or you may view it as a bad thing, but I was in another community last week, and it was across the street from the Fells Reservation, and Woburn, Stoneham, and
Medford?
Yeah, Medford, and that's like a 2,000-acre park. Can't have a better recreational amenity than that, so.
Yeah, I don't care.
But that's where you'd put it, Heidi,
Okay.
in the general conditions.
Okay.
There is a section in here dealing with final plans, and we'd probably amend that to include those elements. No,
You cannot talk to us during our
No.
deliberation. We're closed.
no.
We are closed. We are
No,
closed.
No.
Dave, do you want me to ask you to leave? Please stop talking. We are closed. Do you understand that? Thank you.
So if we all agree about the first part of it. and
Just
we
remember,
get the waivers-
it's not my memory of what you heard, it's yours,
I understand that.
okay? And you have all of the documents to review in case there's any question about what you've heard.
I understand that. Yep.
So can we close that first section?
Like
Well,
up
it's
to the
just-
waivers?
We've accepted that. I think we should look at the waivers right now. But it's up to everybody to accept whatever they see, you know, I mean,
So does
I've
anybody
been
have any
reading this
questions?
thing.
Right, but some of the people haven't done
Haven't read
40Bs
it.
before, right,
Yeah.
so that's where I'm concerned. Does
Yeah.
everybody agree with what's in here as far as the jurisdictional stuff and the safe harbor, all that stuff? Brian Sullivan does, he's very familiar with 40Bs. I'm very familiar with them, and I'm fine with it.
Also, Yep, I'm good.
Yeah, no,
I'm
not
comfortable
familiar, but my understanding is that I can't vote on this one way or the other.
Yeah, but we still want you to learn. I mean,
Yeah, I'm
that's what
definitely
you're,
learning
you know,
every time.
You good, Jane, or?
Yes, I understand.
The beginning part of it.
Beginning part.
Not, we haven't got
Yes.
to the waivers yet.
Why don't we take a look at the
So,
waivers?
let me just clarification then, from my perspective, is we have to agree that this is the law that governs,
Correct.
and then we have to agree that these are the conditions that we currently sit in this town.
Right.
Therefore, it's very logical. It's just boom, boom, boom. Therefore, it leads us to this.
Right.
It's pretty simple.
It is.
It is. Somebody could
in order-
disagree, so that's why we have to have.
So, but it goes in that.
Doesn't mean we agree with what's in front of us, it means. that
Right.
We have no choice.
We have no choice.
Yeah, well, just-
I think it stinks that
Yeah.
we're put in this position, personally. I think
But
it's
then
a
in order
state
to
issue.
approve what was presented to us, they have requested, and we need to grant, if we're going to grant what they presented, we need to grant certain waivers from our municipal bylaws. They still need to comply with the state and, of course, federal regulations, but they're asking for a waiver so that they can have, 5 structures on.
So it's a waiver both on our bylaws, but also that original plan that this thing is a Frankenstein of.
What?
Right, the original plan from 2017 or whatever. This is an amended plan.
Right.
So there have been, they're
Yeah,
asking for
arguably.
change. We have to agree to the amendments to that original plan.
I would say it's a whole new plan, but.
It feels like it, but.
Because there's significantly less earth removal. The number of buildings is different, the number of bedrooms is different, units, et cetera, so.
I mean, I think so too, but that's not what I heard. I heard that it's technically an amendment of something that was approved prior.
So, and that includes, so what we're including in that is the marketing, lottery, affordable units, all that stuff as well?
Yep.
So just under that, number 9, number 2, to the extent permissible by law, the project shall provide the residential preference for up to 70% of the affordable units for the following tenants: current Marshfield residents, Marshfield municipal employees, employees of business located in Marshfield, and households with children attending Marshfield Public Schools, blah, blah, blah. And the applicant shall cooperate with the town in obtaining approvals for local preference. Bob, how can you explain how that would work for us, like, how that would play out?
Can you just kind of repeat what you said?
So, number 2, right? When if this comes into play, how does that work, that they make that?
Are you talking about the waivers now?
No, just the marketing and lottery affordable units.
What page are
number
you
2.
on, Heidi?
Heidi's
Number
on
16?
Page 16.
Page 16?
Thank you.
Andrew, could
Sorry,
you roll up
guys.
to 16?
I don't mean to jump ahead if I am, I just want to make sure we understand
Oh, no,
how
you're
that.
we're going through that.
I'm not really sure that phasing in of affordable units is applicable anymore, because, do you remember when the applicant, I think it was the last hearing, they gave a letter, said, by the way, it would be okay if you want to prove it as a ownership project, as
Yeah.
opposed to, some of these conditions were ownership
So-
type conditions. You don't really phase in affordable units when you're building it as an apartment.
Right.
No, so number 16, which is that it's about the Marshfield residents getting the preference. So it's page
Okay, so
16,
here's
number
how,
2.
here's
does
how
that
the
work?
local preference works.
Okay.
An applicant can agree, if we put a condition in there, that they'll work with us to establish a local preference, and that's frankly, what most communities do. They want, if you're going to approve a project like this, you might as well make it available to local communities. The planning department has to make a presentation of a local preference program to the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities and get that program approved. And if the planning department gets that program approved, then when they go out to market units in an affordable project, that program will be implemented in connection with this project. The burden falls on the town to establish the need and how it would work for a local preference.
Has that been done by Marshfield in the past for the other 40Bs that the board has approved?
I think we've asked for a local preference. I'm not sure it's ever been implemented. I'm not sure if
That would be the role of the town planner to
the town planning
jump through
department
those hoops?
has done that in the past, yes.
I know that was part of Modera, but we did that.
We don't
in-house.
always require it. I mean, these big projects, we don't have enough local people that would probably even qualify with the number of affordable units that would be there. But, you know, this is a different project. It's in a different part of town. It's, you know, I don't know. I think it's advisable to have a local preference in there, and the burden falls on us to establish the need for it, get it approved, and if we get it approved, so I think it should be in there.
So Heidi, the pieces of paper we just got, what you referenced is actually on page 17.
Oh, okay. Well,
That's why I know I couldn't find it.
Sorry,
She has the old
I'm
one.
looking at the originals because I can't even read this thing, it's so small.
Sorry, it's page 17. It's now
I'm trying to
section 9,
find the
part 2.
number. What is it?
Section 9, part 2.
Right,
Okay.
right there, Andrew, yep.
So basically, that says if our town planner doesn't do it, that's what it means, that they don't feel they need, then it doesn't apply? Did I get that wrong? Is that what that means?
I think he's got to show that there is a need in the community for it.
Is
Yeah,
that
he's
why
going
we're
to be,
doing this?
there are certain state standards, so he's got to provide census data, whatever, all
Right.
kinds of stuff to the state to show there's a need and that there's going to be the administering agency would probably be the Marshfield Housing Authority or some
Whatever they
such
call it
thing.
now, yeah.
And the state would then approve that.
Okay.
So, but he would have to
We don't know
gather
that that's been done anyways.
and apparently that has not been done in the past. But I think requiring or
Requesting.
putting as a condition that there's local preference is a layup. I don't, you know, we're getting this thing shoved down our throat.
Right.
At least we can,
Right.
you know,
Benefit.
help, you know, the teachers, firefighters, police officers. Police officers probably wouldn't qualify, but the teachers would. You know, people that work at town hall, I don't know, they may not even qualify because they probably couldn't even afford the affordable
I
rent
know,
for
this is
what
what my
folks
problem is,
at
the
town
whole
hall
thing
get
to
paid.
begin with, these
There, yeah,
stupid
no,
rates
no
are ridiculous.
True story.
You, so the town of Marshfield does not pay a living wage such that they could afford an affordable unit in the town of Marshfield.
Right, so this is ridiculous. It makes me crazy. Because, I know, you don't like to hear this, Brian, but
No,
it's like.
it's not, you're right.
It's the metro rates, so is that what it's called, the metro rates? Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Metropolitan rates, and, but they don't really apply here, and most of our teachers, people that work at Marshalls, gas stations, whatever, can't afford to live at any of the 40Bs that we have.
Affordable.
Yeah, it goes all the way down
Right,
to
so
the
if I got that right?
That's crazy.
So is there any way to change so it's a different percentage?
I don't think you'll ever get a justification to use more than 70%. So that's kind of the maximum. I'm just telling you what the state is.
Heidi,
what the state is
I'm
approved.
100% with you, but I think these are state regs, and I don't see that we have the authority to change any of
The
them.
most you'll probably be able to justify is 70%.
70%, that's,
Can we do that?
yeah,
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
Yeah,
That's what
okay,
it reads.
yeah.
It's already in
Right.
there.
Rather than the 80?
Yeah, it's in there,
Okay.
I believe. Unless I'm blind.
I don't know, I
Top
can't read it,
line,
I don't know
so-
what's wrong,
Oh,
with it. I can't read a
where's
freaking
your
thing
piece?
today,
Read it.
this stupid thing.
I'm for getting past what we can get past tonight and then having the opportunity to digest this. I'd like
Oh,
to read
absolutely.
this
Well, that's
myself.
why I'd like to go through the
Again.
waivers if we could, because
Okay,
really that's the.
let's grant the waivers.
So, all right, Andrew, you want to go to page 26?
It's the real page.
Oh, 26 on it.
These are so small, I can't
Did I
even
roll
stand
by
it.
or something?
Okay, so the first waiver is for one family, two family, multifamily dwellings to be constructed on a lot. Construction consists of 8 buildings, 56 units, 88 bedrooms, with proposed septic systems, drainage, utility, and infrastructure. I move that we grant that exemption as, this is
26.
Page 27.
No, yeah, 26 is the first one.
26.
26 is the
The
first.
old one's 27, I think, and the new one.
The new one, it's the
26.
very bottom of 26.
So we'll start there. You can read it.
I think right here, the
Would you
one
allow one
Nancy
family?
just gave
So
you.
this
No,
is,
you're right.
That's the most
Roll
updated.
right back a little bit. You might be on the right one. Yeah, you just read the right one.
What's being asked?
Yeah, he read the right one.
this is so confusing.
It isn't.
You can
Okay.
vote, but it's
The most
five votes.
up-to-date one?
Yeah,
So-
so,
Can you-
Yeah, but you
Can I
haven't
just
sat on
clarify what this
the
is?
whole hearing.
yeah, go ahead.
You don't have to.
One Nancy.
I don't mean to nitpick, but does this mean that we're comfortable with the units that they're putting in, even though the Board of Health
participate in the
and the
discussion.
town planner suggested a lower amount? Is this right here where we do this? We're fine with the number of units? Is that this section right here? Did you hear me?
This section is a section that every 40B project needs, because we have a local bylaw, the requirement that it basically says you can put one single-family house on a property, except in, the multifamily districts, which
Right.
this is not. So if you deny this waiver, there is no project. So this
So
is,
this is not where we talk about, and I don't mean to be stupid, I feel like I'm so tired I can't even think straight, but is this where we talk about the number of units, or
yep, you can talk about
This
it
is
in the
where we
context of this
think that-
discussion, too.
so the Board of Health and the town planner suggest a lesser amount? Anybody have any thoughts on that before we move forward?
What was the town planner's recommendation on
I don't
this?
know, I can't remember. Nancy, can you pull up, or Andrew, somebody pull up something with the town planner and the Board of Health, what they had for the numbers? I'm sorry that I'm so unorganized about this.
You're not.
My head's on fire right now.
What we do.
Yeah,
Work-
everything should be on the website.
I don't mean to be a pain.
You're not being a pain. You're trying to understand something that's very important.
You're being illogical.
Don't feel like that.
No one says that to me, no.
And that's what the units are going to look like.
Yes.
Is that what they're going to build?
He's my lobsterman's house, Jack Phillips.
And
It's a nice whaler.
do you have
I'm
that?
not really seeing what you mean, Heidi.
So,
I found that
remember
one
when-
email from Greg, but
It should be town planner memos or
Geeman,
emails.
did
So I
you?
got a May 13th memo from Greg.
Thank you, Ed.
It talks about the playground and dog walk. Maybe that's what we're talking about. It's the only thing I can think of that comes to mind.
Because there was something that he had said, something about lesser units, and I think the Board of Health did it. That may have come from an email through the Board of Public Works, or, remember that they had a conversation. Is this part of it here?
Looking for the discussion about density that you're referring to.
Is this here? Political residence.
Well, that's the
That's what it was
original.
before, but I thought they had said no. Am I just making this up?
Well, there's a lot to digest here.
That might be it.
That's the one I have, yes.
Right. No, that's not what
So
you're
they-
looking at.
Did nobody else recalls this conversation?
He appeared at the second meeting,
Right,
and I think he verbally led with comments.
okay. I thought there was something about, maybe it's the email from the Board of Health. That came through the Board of Public Works to Gary or something?
Oh, that was the letter from the Board of Public Works to the health agent.
And I have this. Did something in there describe a lesser amount? I mean, I just don't want to miss it if we're,
I have an April 30th letter to Gary Russell from the Department of Public Works. That's what you're referring to?
right. Okay.
So Heidi, they're proposing 56 units and 88 bedrooms in 8 buildings. What are you proposing?
I'm not proposing, I'm just saying if the Board of Health and the Planning Board came up with that we should lesser the units, I just want to know, I want to go back and look at that and see what they're recommending and the reasoning behind it, and if we can if that's something that we need to discuss. Before we go forward, I just want to make sure that we're not missing something when it comes to the size of the project.
Well, we're not going to finalize.
I mean, I do recall something on those lines.
just don't
Yeah, I
have a
mean, other than
number.
0 buildings, 0 units, and 0 bedrooms, I'm inclined to approve 8 buildings, 56 units, and 88 bedrooms.
So,
We can, so we don't have to,
Could we consult with?
yeah, we can bring this back. We're
I just
not
want to
doing
double
this
check,
tonight.
right,
We
okay,
can
I
check
just
and
want
see what's
to,
been
this
filed.
I just want to see what they had to say
Right,
about
so
it and
we'll
the
go
reasoning
back-
behind it.
We'll go
Just
back
that's
to
all.
number 1. So now let's go to number 2. You reading?
Applicant seeks a waiver to allow for multiple principal structures at the site.
I'm good with that.
I'm okay with that.
Dean?
Number 3, applicant seeks a waiver to allow 1-family, 2-family, and multifamily dwellings to be constructed on a lot with frontage equal to 0 feet.
Yeah, remember this lot doesn't have any technical
Doesn't have
frontage on a
technical
way.
frontage.
It's accessed via a right-of-way. That's why that's there.
Right.
Okay.
Which I think that that's an easy yes.
Yeah.
Applicant seeks, okay, so, let me see. Applicant seeks a waiver to allow 1-family, 2-family, multifamily dwellings to be constructed with a setback of building 4 to the property line of 7.9 feet and an accessory structure covered walkway with 0 setback.
So we're going to remove the
Wasn't a covered walkway
walkway.
removed.
So an accessory structured covered walkway is to be removed.
And now we have a pool of $100,000
Right.
to apply to a playground.
Is this where we would put the playground information in, Bob, or add it?
No, I would make that a
You're being fresh.
general
No.
condition of a final plan.
Okay,
No, that's found money. That's not right.
so we're going to strike that piece out. We'll have that in our notes.
So that was I keep calling it covered wagon, but the covered
Which one are we
bridge.
striking
Yeah, the
out?
covered bridge.
What's that?
Which one are we striking out?
After 7.9, where it says, "and an accessory structure covered walkway with 0 setback."
So it should be a period after the 7.9 feet.
Yes.
7.9
a period
period.
after the
7.9.
Yeah, so
Apostrophe.
it would just read, applicant
At the
seeks
nine.
waiver to allow 1-family, 2-family, and multifamily dwellings to be constructed with a setback of building 4 to the property line of 7.9. That's it.
And
So this is the waiver they've submitted. So what you would do is granted as per provide plans with the exception of the accessory structured covered, which is denied.
okay.
Project may involve phased occupancy. Applicant seeks a waiver to allow for a certificate of occupancy prior to the completion of all buildings on site.
It says competition.
Requirements, no such.
Competition.
It's kind of weird because
Should say completion.
each building has its own certificate of occupancy.
Yeah,
So they'll be granted certificates of occupancy as each one is completed.
Move along.
yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So we're okay with that.
Okay.
Andrew, yep.
Proponent seeks a waiver of requirement as project may take longer to commence/complete, not to exceed 3 years from start date, presumably is what it says.
The date the approved
Date the approved.
comprehensive permit and final plans with the Plymouth County Registry of Deeds.
That's the
I
rest
think
of
they
that?
should start within a year and complete within 3 years. Is that not unreasonable?
Most 40B projects, and this one's probably no different, require additional permitting from the state. And if you were to grant an approval, they'd still have to get that. So this permit really technically won't even start running until they get their other permits and approvals. And when they want an extension, that's considered an insubstantial change.
So Bob, can we condition it, they've got to commence within 1 year of obtaining all,
Final permits and approvals?
yeah, all, state and local approvals.
Yeah. So you, in that case, you're really not talking about a waiver or a complete waiver, it's a partial waiver.
Again, a partial waiver, okay.
Can you do it though?
Yeah,
We just-
you
We can put it in
can
there?
limit a waiver too.
Yeah.
Is it
See,
limited
it's
or
a partial waiver granted. And you want work to commence
Within 1 year. And conclude
within
1 year of final.
year of receipt of all final state and federal permits and approvals. And to be completed within 3?
Yes, please.
Okay.
So can I just ask, and I agree with this, but just for the record and just for the public, why would you be saying to begin within a year, like to do?
So that they
No, I
don't
just
drag
want to
this
make sure,
out.
no, I just want to put it out there for the public so everybody
Oh,
understands.
yeah.
The reason why
Yeah,
it
you
would be.
give
Right,
folks an inch, they'll take a mile.
right, okay. I just want to
Yeah,
make sure it's
but-
out
but,
there.
No, you just have to really be careful because we've had these projects and they linger for years. That Webster Point Village.
That's ridiculous.
We've
God.
been
Just when
granting
we first
approvals
started,
for that
wasn't
for
Languishing.
12 years or whatever. and
Languishing is
They
the
keep
word.
on asking. And the last one, we gave them an extension and some of you weren't on the board. We gave them an extension for 6 months because we just wanted them to record the final plan. They didn't even do that. They appealed it. And that was like 3 years ago.
That was a while
And
ago.
they won.
Okay, the
All
next
right.
one?
A curb cut permit, proponent seeks waiver from this requirement that driveway openings, special permits must be approved by a special permit granting authority.
I don't have
I
a
guess-
problem with that.
Who is the
You-
special
you-
permit?
We
grantor?
You are.
We're the SPGA.
So we are granting a waiver against ourselves?
Ourselves.
No, you're granting a requirement that they have to go to anybody else other than you.
Oh,
Just us.
okay.
I agree with that.
Proponent seeks a waiver from the table of use regulations,
What? Oh,
which allows for more than 30% of impervious surface or more than 60% of the site within a commercial or industrial district becoming impervious on a, okay, that they seek a waiver from this requirement allowing 35% impervious on a 10-acre site. 5-acre parcel adjacent to the locus is being used as credit land for nitrogen loading purposes. The 5 acres is included in the metric, the site coverage becomes 24%. And they've demonstrated site control on the adjacent 5-acre parcel?
Yes.
They own that.
Yeah, okay, so. that's
So
fine.
the letter that came in from the DEP, Brett Rowe, was that they don't need the extra 5 acres as credit land because they're getting below the 10% and they're actually below 5%.
Okay.
so
That was my recollection.
But we can still grant the waiver,
they
right?
could put
Yeah.
the playground.
Oh,
Mile
that's
away.
the east, that's the.
And
So the waiver that they're asking for is actually to go,
Put a pitting.
instead of 30%, they want to go to 35%.
Right.
But that's just contemplating the fact that they have 10 acres, but they actually have 15.
15. Okay.
Okay.
Then general bylaw waivers, they seek a waiver from the Marshfield earth removal bylaw.
Yeah, so what we've done in the past on earth removal is basically you act as the earth removal permit granting authority and you impose conditions.
Right.
And, you know, I believe Ed has verified, you know, the truck trips,
Truck
they get
trips,
tracked and
days they're
that it
allowed,
gets
times.
disposed of properly. They're not supposed to remove any topsoil from the site. But all of the other projects have involved some quantity of earth removal. My memory was that the first Mill Creek was around 50,000 cubic yards.
Correct.
Yep.
So my recollection that I remember hearing on this one is that they got this down to 125,000.
Right, but,
No more than the 150.
yeah, no more than 150 is what they're saying, so.
And then applicant seeks a waiver from section 9B to waive the application fee for earth removal.
Yeah, they're not going to be making a separate application to the ZBAs,
Right.
or to the select board, so you probably want to waive that.
That's fine. They seek a waiver from the Marshfield Water Conservation Bylaw.
Yeah,
We are saying no, thank you.
I think you should deny that. If we have a water pan in town,
Yeah,
I think that's not a
Deny.
hardship for them.
yeah.
Denied.
Then they seek a waiver from the provision of 285-19.1 of the Marshfield Water Conservation Bylaw, which pertains to what?
PFAS.
Oh, PFAS. Oh, yeah. That's granted.
Yeah, but it really shouldn't be granted as a complete
decision.
grant. There's a section in this decision that relates to that.
Yeah.
And the applicant can comply with some of these requirements, and you may want to impose it on
So
them
we can do it
anyways.
partially.
Well,
So what would you,
see, I would grant the waiver of that specific language, and then I would say they need to comply with the following standards when it comes to PFAS.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Well, the language that's in here says granted as per decision conditions.
Okay, so
so
we
that
can.
means whatever
we can
conditions we
condition
come
it.
in, we
Well,
put
you're
in?
only waiving it to the extent that you've allowed it to be wavered by your conditions.
By our own conditions, so that's
Yeah.
good. Yeah, we can do that. Because we still control it.
Well, look at us making progress.
Yeah, that's the waivers? Well, now the digestion.
I think probably, to the extent you want to keep talking about it, you can, but it probably makes sense to talk about conditions.
Right.
I'm not Stephen Feeney, by the way.
You're not seeing what?
I'm not Stephen Feeney.
Oh, I know. He's been X'd out, so has Grover's book. Didn't even know
No, Grover's on there.
that. I know, he's not supposed to be. Doesn't matter.
So
All right, so conditions.
Do we have a listing?
Do we have a list, Bob?
Ed?
Yeah, they begin on page 14.
The new
In the
14?
teeny writing. All right.
Conditions of
And the baby
approval,
writing right over
the
there?
new 13.
Ridiculous. Oh,
Number one's pretty standard.
So it starts with that asterisk,
what?
which I think goes above.
Right.
Right here, right?
Yeah, the conditions.
Page 14?
So how do you want to
the
do
new
these? Do
13.
you want to have Brian Sullivan read?
Well, I mean, I think we can read them.
Or do you want to just do them?
I think we can all read them and say you agree or you disagree. And, well, Bob can, I mean, they're pretty simple. The first one's pretty basic.
So the first one basically is a requirement that they prepare final plans.
Right.
And those final plans have to be consistent with the revised plan, which is I think it's the April 3rd, 2024 plan.
Correct. I confirmed the date today.
Thank you.
Yeah, so when the other 40B projects get down to the next phase, they bring a set of plans into Andrew, and Andrew and Ed chat about whether the plans are consistent with what your decision says and the last revised plans. And if there's any controversy, they kick it back up to you.
I did a a review of the Mill Creek plans, asked them to make a few revisions and clarifications, which they did. And then I wrote a letter saying it was, complies with this section.
And Bob, I just want to clarify, Ed's involved in this through the final certificate of occupancy?
Yeah, our practice in Marshfield has always been to have our peer reviewer work with Andrew Stewart
Right.
in the evaluation of the final plans and to make sure that all permits and approvals are in place, but then to have a construction monitor in place. And Ed has been the construction monitor on our 40B projects, and that's done at an applicant's expense.
Good.
As much as some of these projects are considered controlled construction, and there's an architectural kind of control over it. The site work is not subject to an architect's review, and it always makes sense to have our consultant, not their consultants, telling us whether it's been built right.
Yeah, I mean, if the site work is wrong,
Yeah, the grades are off.
Yeah.
And Ed probably checks the pavements and the site spot checks and things like that.
Yep, we do all the drainage system checks before they're backfilled. We do checks for the roadway, gravel base thickness and parking lot base thickness. We do compaction, make sure they do compaction tests. So we have them do sieve analysis. They have their own geotechnical engineer for this on the Mill Creek site, and the site will probably be no different. And so they have an independent testing agency doing this. And then we make sure they do compaction testing before they come in and do paving. And then after paving, I make sure all the striping and signage and all the other things that final landscaping all get done correctly. So we observe and witness sewer and water utilities and electric utilities going in, although those 3 utilities have their own inspecting teams and certification teams. But we go through all the site work. So out of Mill Creek, water and sewer are underway right now, as is drainage and earthwork. So if you've driven by, I'm sure you have, all the trees are gone and the site's been kind of massaged a bit, and there's a lot of utilities going in right now. Myself and Pat Brennan are doing the inspections.
thank you.
Decision to. I'm good with number 2.
Yep, number 2 is okay.
Everybody?
Yep, 3, 4, 5.
On 3, is it just the town of Marshfield we're concerned with? Do we add Commonwealth as well?
It's not within our jurisdiction to say that.
Well, this is an agreement. We can get them to agree to anything, right?
I mean, I don't think it applies here.
Okay.
The applicant shall pay all fees the town of Marshfield impose generally with respect to construction projects for the purpose of monitoring compliance of the construction and occupancy of the project in accordance with the final comprehensive permit. I'm good with number 4.
Yep.
Applicant shall copy the board. So we take out ZBA and we just put board? It could be any board.
No, it's the board which is referenced earlier, the ZBA, shall hereinafter be referred to as the board. That's prior
Okay.
in the permit.
Okay.
Well, I think Bob did that.
All right, 5 is good?
Mm-hmm.
6?
Yep. 7 is fine.
Oh, God, what's on the back? Yes, this is. I just want to read what the hell it says. How was it?
No, you went backwards.
I went backwards? No.
Number 15.
Did I?
Yeah, we did the same thing.
So where am I going?
Number 15, page 15, number 8.
Where is 15? I swear to God, I feel like a toddler right now.
Andrew, can you roll down one more page? Thank you.
Is the eastern box turtle habitat considered conservation land?
No, it's the turtle habitat exists on their land.
Thought it was specifically on that 5-acre parcel.
Well, it could move. I mean,
Yeah,
granted,
slowly.
not quickly. But it's not,
You're asking if that needs to be in this
Yeah,
section,
that's,
right?
that there's
Okay.
something specific to that habitat that we've called out elsewhere.
National heritage, right. We don't need to add that to this,
No,
right?
I don't
No.
think you're allowed to
Okay.
talk about their location.
All right. Each condition is run with the land.
Can I just double check what number that was?
8.
It is 8, okay. I just looking for the threshold.
Everybody good with 9?
Yep.
Again, just, there's 2 parcels here, so land being identified as both those parcels, not just one.
I'm pretty sure, yeah. It's the 15 acre, they own the 15 acre.
It's in its entirety, right? The 50?
No, they're building it on
Project's
the
on the
10-acre
10.
section
That's
of
what
the
they're-
site.
so
And then the
Mac
5
was-
is the
it
credit
both?
land, but they.
There's something in my memory that tells me that they have to, if they're going to be allowed to develop the 10 acres, the 5 acres have to be set aside for turtle habitat.
Turtle habitat,
Right.
right.
And I.
And credit, yeah, and
I
it's
seem to
credit.
remember the draft conservation and management permit that we have in the record talks about all this work that needs to be done to create habitat areas
In the 5 acres.
on the 5 acres.
Putting out
Now,
this in
there's one exception to that. The Department of Public Works, about 15 years ago, built a detention basin on a portion of the 5-acre parcel.
When Armstrong owned it or when the town owned it?
Armstrong owned it at the time. We had permission until we didn't. When
does that mean?
the select board,
And they turned them down.
when the select board refused to allow him to build the soccer
Rescinded.
fields, the permission was revoked, and we got into a lawsuit. The lawsuit was settled by them agreeing to give us an easement for the detention basin to remain. There's a massive drainage problem at Silver Pines, and there's actually, the stormwater flows from the salt shed property onto this property too.
Yeah.
So we got an easement given to us to keep that flow and infiltrate it there. So other than that area, where the rest of it would be available.
So my question is, anytime the word land is mentioned, does it include both parcels? It says,
Well,
it
the project
has
is
to be
being
filed-
built on the 10-acre
10-acre
parcel,
piece,
but
they own
the
all of it.
the land includes an additional 5 acres.
I just want to make sure that they're
So it
never able
actually
to.
doesn't, it doesn't have to be clarified then?
No.
Okay.
I just don't want them ever to be able to split that 5 acre off and do something else with it.
Playground now.
Teach the turtles to swim. And
The turtles,
Logs
the turtles were nesting in the wall of the detention
great.
basin.
Yeah.
What? That's all right, the number 10. 56.
Oh, this is you want to come back to number 10 because you
Right.
want to.
We want to double check about that.
Yeah.
Okay. Only road.
Number 11 looks fine.
Okay, that's a yes, yeah. Well,
12 is fine. The money.
okay.
Andrew, can you roll down to 13, please? Thank you.
Said system shall be equipped and allowed indicating the property manager maintenance. So,
Wouldn't 14 be where we say they've got to report to us quarterly
Quarterly, right.
for 3 years? That
Is
the
this-
system is working as, as designed?
is it 13 or 14 that would go into that?
I think that the nitro system is 13.
It's new 13.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, so they scratched 14 and made that, 13 and made it. So 13 is on the front side and rolls down to the bottom where it says the design, and then 14 picks up at the applicant shall incorporate.
Yes. Okay.
so
And
they
that's where I
say
think it goes.
yearly, at least annually, but we.
At least quarterly.
Quarterly.
For 3 years, is that
Yeah,
what we?
because they've got to report to DEP, just copy us in the email. I don't
Right.
see it's a,
They're already doing it.
yeah, it's not a heavy lift.
Right. I agree.
Now
This
they
doesn't say
report to
to
DEP
us.
for 3
To,
years.
to the,
Yeah.
the
This
board.
this just says to the Board of Health. This doesn't actually
So
say.
they're just
report to us.
basically CC.
But my concern with that, if they're new systems,
What?
3 years,
No,
they're
that's
brand
what
new,
we're
they're gonna be
saying.
working. What's the long-term plan for compliance of these systems?
Yeah, the condition just says it's got to be done to the Board of Health, not to us.
Yeah, but we're
Right,
talking.
we're adding ourselves.
Reporting quarterly
Quarterly.
for a 3-year time frame. The systems, again, the systems are gonna be brand new, so they would be performing, I would assume, within the first 3 years.
So what do you
What's
propose,
the
Larry?
long-
Like, for the
What-
first 5 years, 10 years, 6 years?
So there was a
Yeah, annually?
recommendation by environmental partners on this nitro
This
system.
year?
And the recommendations were condition of monthly reporting for the lifetime of the equipment.
Monthly report?
Monthly.
Monthly reporting for the lifetime of the equipment, in addition to the nitro provisional permit requirements. I don't know what those are. Ed, do you know what those are?
So I, again, started to look them up, and I did find, and this was something that we had circulated amongst the board members, but I know probably didn't look at it that closely, but I'll read from the provisional use approval. It says, let me see. Let me see, seasonal properties, this is the part where I wanted to make sure I was including it correctly, but it talks about operation and maintenance. It says, prior to the use of a system, the system owner shall enter into an O&M agreement with a qualified contractor. That should be for at least 1 year, and they should include operation and maintenance, and this is the part that I put in there requiring sampling, field testing, and I put in there some examples of what that is, because that's part of what's written in their provisional approval. I think this section, just FYI, I think this section 13 can stand on its own because it refers to some other things that I think are important. That's why I left it there. And that is that the said system shall be equipped with an alarm, and that and also a backup power system, and that any failure shall be reported to the Board of Health. They're supposed to do the same thing. They're supposed to report any failure to the DEP. In here, it doesn't leap out at me exactly what sampling and analysis, other than some reports that they have to provide. By September 30th of each year, the system owner and service contractor shall be responsible for submitting to the local approval authority all monitoring reports and results and inspection checklists during the previous 12 months.
I think.
So I was going to sit down with a subject matter expert, make sure I read this right and included that, but I think the way I worded it in a later condition under section 9, on my page 26, I don't know what page it is on yours, but it's under I believe it was 26.
I think you're missing a true that environmental partners wanted. If the performance exceeds 10 milligrams per liter total nitrogen in effluent, a conventional backup needs to be in place. And I think they're saying use best available nitrogen reducing technology, 10 milligrams per liter or below, or connection to the municipal sewer system. I mean, I think that's a condition you should put in there.
Yeah.
Environmental
Is
partners.
this where it would go?
or
To the DPW.
Yeah, I think you'd put it in
they're the
section
ones that
13.
did
In
what I'm going to
Presentation.
call.
There we go,
my-
go back, stop.
Purely my
Right here.
view. Purely my view.
I guess it was page 21 where I was, sorry.
Okay.
So right here,
Yeah.
item 10. So I mentioned all this testing and, you know, I referenced the provisional use renewal approval renewal dated May 12th, 2020, and so it's all listed in there.
Yeah.
I just don't feel comfortable with a 3-year time frame that it stops. Again, the system's gonna be new for 3 years, and it's not gonna be under the stress of living conditions.
It's like a 30,000-mile warranty on a new car.
I think it should be.
You know, I want
should be permanent.
guarantees when this system
Permanent?
would be,
Permanent.
Permanent?
yeah, permanent, whether it be.
Well, the way the
Quarterly.
EPS framed it, it's a permanent condition. It says if the performance exceeds 10 milligrams per liter in effluent, they need a conventional backup in place.
Right.
And
That was
that
only-
ensures that we're not falling
Behind.
below
But
what.
that was only
Right.
if it was greater than 10. This
Right.
is regardless of what it is. Less than 10, greater than 10, it's a reporting requirement.
So can I just ask a question? This might have been answered, and it kind of goes along with this environmental partners thing. If that expires in 2025, then what happens? Do they automatically, if they haven't had any issues, which I didn't get a response to that, Ed, you would probably know thus far if there's been any?
It moves forward to what's called general use approval, which is a good thing. It means it's
Yep.
showing appropriate data and performance that is now sufficient for general use rather than provisional use only.
Maybe we make,
So the 3 levels are piloting, which is the very beginning, then provisional use, then general use. General use can be used for any term, any location, for any application.
so would we require this level of testing and reporting up until it becomes approved under a general use?
I'd continue it.
Even
But see,
thinking about that.
you know, just because the system gets approved, again, I'm
I would
not worried about
continue
all
it
the systems. I'm
permanently as
concerned
well.
with this
Yeah, I
one.
wouldn't,
I don't have any problem with it. I'm just gonna,
I don't
but
think it
I am
makes it
gonna say
uneconomical for
this,
anybody.
again, is that if the environmental partners are who are the people I'm thinking of, the people who did what I'm gonna call the exceedingly faulty model work,
Agreed.
which paints a bad picture in my mind for everything else they said.
However,
However, you're right. I'm going to listen.
if they have recommendations
They have
that
recommendations, and I'm going to
will
listen.
protect the
But
town,
those
then
recommendations
we
seem to be
should-
based on
right.
exceedingly faulty modeling assumptions.
However, if they protect us and the town, I think it's okay to adopt them.
I agree. No, matter of fact, I'm 100%. I'd rather do it because I want to protect the town rather than based on what environmental partners said.
Do I wish they had tested actual samples in the?
Well, we
Yes,
could
I
have
do.
saved 125 grand and just done this on our
Properly,
own.
right.
And not just said, oh, the water flows this way in our model, even though it doesn't flow that way regularly. And, oh, by the way, we're going to assume that all of this gets injected directly into the groundwater. It doesn't have to filter through 30 feet of sediment first.
So with that
So-
said, we all agree.
Yeah, so what kind of testing are we looking for?
I would-
Monthly testing, annual testing?
I would say quarterly reporting for the life of the system to the Board of Health.
Ed?
So they're required to provide a contractor, a qualified contractor. You can't just walk away like a regular conventional Title V septic system. So for any innovative alternative system, they're required to have an O&M contractor.
Yes.
That in turn, there are some requirements, even at general use approval, there are some requirements for testing and reporting annually. And you have to have an operator, so you have to have a qualified operator. So the homeowner's not qualified to do this. The homeowner's qualified to just flush the toilet, right? Just like a regular conventional septic system. But they're not qualified to operate this. So that DEP incorporates those kind of safeguards in all these provisional and then follow on general use approvals.
But Ed, this is going to have a property management company. It's going to be an apartment, professionally managed apartment complex, for lack of a better phrase. And so that management company, it's going to behoove that management company to stay on top of the maintenance and the operation of this system. So the contractor they're going to report to DEP until it has their general approval. But then after that, we want the property management company to report to us or to the Board of Health on a quarterly basis for the life of the system that it's operating as it was designed to operate and in compliance with DEP regulations.
I like that.
So I generally don't see any problem with quarterly, since they have to do some of that anyway. Eventually, it'll be semi-annually down the road, but they'll have to be doing testing to demonstrate that. So I don't see a problem with quarterly. Again, I just need to consult someone that's involved in this so I understand exactly what this particular technology is required to do on a regular basis. But I think for now, if you want to say that, I think that's not unreasonable. What I was trying to do was blanket the requirement for testing, not just for 1 year, but for 3 years. What you're saying is, I guess we could say, that we want quarterly testing for what? For the term of provisional use or forever?
Forever.
Forever.
Life of the system.
Lifetime of the system.
I mean, say in 15 years, the system all of a sudden has an issue with it. We don't want to not be aware of that. We don't want this having it get bigger than it needs to and with no safety nets in place.
Yeah, Ed, as you might remember at the meeting, I'd asked the question, what's the life expectancy of a Title V system? And I think I was told it's 20 years properly maintained.
Correct. 20 to 30, depending on where you are, what the use is. Correct.
Exactly. And, I jokingly made a reference to a warranty that you get with a vehicle. The manufacturers will give you a warranty as long as they know it's not going to cost them anything. But the reality is you don't need a warranty the first 30,000 miles. You need it once that car gets over 100,000 miles. So what we're asking for is testing, when the system's hitting 100,000 miles.
Right, so just so you know, in the provisional use approval, there's language about what they have to do for a system failure and what they have to correct.
Yeah,
Just so you know, it's not absent from that provisional use approval.
Yeah, I'm not I don't think that this system's going to go into failure. That's
Agreed.
catastrophic. I think this system's going to, work as it's designed to. But, God forbid something happen, not, 1, 2, 3 years down the road, but, 8 years down the road.
Yeah.
Then who's on the hook?
Yeah, we just want to know.
It's going to be the property owners, it's going to be the property management company, or the property owner that's going to be footing the bill. But, if the system's not functioning, we want to know as soon as possible.
And with that being said, on a quarterly testing, the system, if it starts failing, you're going to see the levels
Yeah, you'll see the
rising.
trend.
And you'd be able to pick it up.
Absolutely.
So someone would be able to track this.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Ed, do you foresee an
I
issue?
don't really see a downside yet, but again, I'll consult someone and I will get back to you.
All right, so
Awesome.
is this
Thank you.
still 13 or is that 14?
No, we agreed
I think
on-
that's 13.
So,
13?
so I was gonna put it in where Andrew has what you're talking about, where Andrew has it right here at section 10.
Sure.
Or item 10. It talks about the quarterly reports. I can edit that as we just discussed. I think where you have 13 currently, I think you ought to leave, for the most part, intact, because it requires them to do other things.
Right, and we'll put
And
it
it's
in that
not
section.
uncommon for you to have mutually supporting conditions for the same general area. like you do in other areas like
As long
earth
as,
removal.
as long as one
what have you.
clause doesn't potentially negate the other.
And what,
Correct.
should we add something in here also that some type of condition if the system does start to go into failure, what the action plan should be at that point?
Brian, I have a condition, and I'll read it to you when the next draft comes out. If the performance of the system exceeds 10 milligrams per liter such that the system is deemed by the Board of Health to be non-performing or failing, the applicant, its successor assigned, shall repair or replace the system with the best available nitrogen-reducing technology, 10 milligrams per liter or below, or connect to the municipal sewer system. That was a condition that was recommended by EPS.
Yeah, so that's a good, we'll add that in.
Yep, I like that.
So we're not taking out,
No, we're leaving that alone.
we're not, where it says at least annual, we're not doing the quarterly. We're not
We're
leaving
gonna
that alone.
have both in there.
We're having both, all right, so that's my question.
If Ed Pesci could recommend some language to edit the
Okay.
paragraph he inserted, that would
Supersede it.
All right, we'll just.
on the monthly reporting,
By that. Okay.
or whatever that is.
Quarterly.
Yeah, so I'll fix this item 10. Again, item 13 in the previous section, I think has other requirements that are good that should stay there.
The backup power source too is in there?
He's got it in
The
there.
backup power source, so each system shall be equipped with a backup power source sufficient to power electric components of the system satisfactory to board's peer review consultant, and the final comprehensive permit site plan shall depict that design. That was on page 15 and 16.
Now, Ed, do you feel comfortable with quarterly reporting? Is that something you feel comfortable with?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I'm not overburdening the operator. So I want to make sure that that's not an overburdensome. It's not at the beginning. They certainly have to do it, at the very beginning, they do it monthly.
Yep.
But I don't know what,
Overburdening for the potential protection of the town is worth it.
But you think,
correct, but I just want to make sure I want to make sure you know what that requirement involves. So I want to make sure I talk to the right people to advise you. But at this very moment, I don't see a problem.
okay, but like, the point I was trying to get at, if, say, 10, 15 years down the road, you feel that testing quarterly would be able to pick up any issues that this system would be having in time, that would be a safe enough process. Did
I would
say
say
that
yes. I would
Feel
say
confident?
that testing quarterly will pick up the requirement or the condition that you've already said you want quarterly test reports. And what I'm going to also include is what that should include, okay? Because you want it to definitely be testing for nitrogen, not just flow, right?
Yep.
So you want to make sure we do that.
And,
Anyway,
back to 13.
quarterly testing reports for the life of the system for quarterly testing reports will certainly bring up in 30 to 90 days. It'll bring up the problem. It'll surface enough for them to determine whether it's a problem. It'll certainly be monitored closer than that at a higher frequency than that at the beginning. But again, I want to just consult someone so I can tell you. This is not something that I've had to contract with folks to do before, and I want to make sure I'm reading it right.
Yeah, you do, page 21.
Thank you.
This is where I think that condition that Heidi was talking about before should be added as 15.
Okay.
And that would be, the final, let's see how that we referred to them. Final comprehensive permit site plans shall include, and Heidi, what's your memory of what they were
A
going to do?
dog walking area, and Greg's.
Recreational area, what was it?
And a
Recreational, playground.
Yeah.
They called it an amenity.
Call it a garden.
They called it.
No, they called
They
it
said
a
they
garden.
wanted to do
They
a
wanted a
garden,
garden.
which was.
I think we can just adopt Greg's language when we find it.
Yeah.
Or we can
do
just
that?
put it
'Cause
in
we're
there.
gonna come back to that anyways?
Yeah, we're gonna come back to a couple things here anyways.
All right, so I'm just adding a placeholder for 15.
Placeholder
Final
15 for-
Final comprehensive plan shall be revised to include Greg Geeman's suggestion.
Yeah,
What
For u-
section is
For
this?
use by the residents.
right.
It's not a public park.
Yeah,
right?
I want to be clear about that.
Okay.
Okay?
And that's it on that section. Then we get into the affordable, right?
Did we go over 14? Brian, are we up past your bedtime?
Yeah, I'm ready to cancel it.
Do you want to stop here, guys,
Yeah,
and pick
then
it up?
We'll pick it up, well, we'll go home, digest what we've done. Bob's gonna
Brian's going to turn into a pumpkin.
and then, Bob can review it, and then we'll get it, and we'll be
Your
good.
glass slippers still on your
Yeah,
feet?
Is he going to get a cleaned up version?
9:37.
Is that all right? You think we can go back?
Yeah, so when I send you another version, I'll send you
clean it
a
up.
red line, and a clean one.
So we're going to get rid of all this other stuff and just work off the main, the new.
Yeah.
If you'd rather have a clean one, I'll just give you the clean one. At that point, I'll have, I think, Ed Pesci's language on the wastewater.
Yep.
And if, Ed, you could take a look at those recommendations on the EPS.
Yeah, I got it right in front of me. I'll edit that accordingly, that section accordingly.
And would you look at that section of the local bylaw that deals with the PFAS and see if you could recommend something there?
So I was just going to recommend something. I have in front of me the May 13th letter from Sullivan and Comerford regarding what they were offering to do.
Yeah.
And I'll just state real quick that they mentioned that the applicants will provide informational materials to all tenants regarding PFAS and what items tenants should avoid using due to containing PFAS.
Yeah.
So
But I think it needs more than that.
Yeah, I think that's not sufficient.
No microwave
Right.
popcorn?
I mean, it should be posted in the house with like the regular stuff that you have, but I think they need more than that. Like,
Right, so they did mention that despite requesting a waiver, the applicant is committed to making best efforts to reduce all PFAS in the course of construction and
It is
further post-construction. But I don't know what other things we could require them to do without, I mean, I'll take a look at putting some language together, but that's something we should just tweak the next time we're together.
so should we have something to say, if something does come down the pike in the state or whatever, that you would have to comply with? A filtering system or something?
One of the
Like, how
things
does
that's coming down the pipe in the future is that, like, all the Cape, and Ed, you probably know more about it than I do, but the entire Cape is a nitrogen-sensitive area now. So
Yes.
if you have a conventional septic system, you've been basically told you have, what, 5 years, Ed, before you have to update it?
Either upgrade it to
Or
a
connect.
recognized advanced tier 2 technology like nitro, or connect to sewer.
That's coming.
Yeah,
Right,
it's coming everywhere.
it is. It is, every town on the Cape is engaged in sewer design and construction right now.
And it's coming to southeast
yeah.
Massachusetts next. So if
But
you have a
that,
conventional
there
septic
could be some, emerging regulations about PFAS treatment technologies for wastewater, and I don't know, in a wastewater treatment plant, centralized treatment plant, it's more feasible, but it's also very expensive, likely, because it's such small, low concentrations. It's already required for drinking water, public drinking water suppliers. So whether it be public or private, and it's not an easy thing to do. What's ironic is tomorrow, all morning, I'm gonna be at the Veterans Administration Cemetery, the Massachusetts National Cemetery in Bourne, sampling the irrigation wells for PFAS, believe it or not, sending them off to a lab for their compliance testing for DEP. So now that's irrigation water, they wanna make sure doesn't have PFAS in it, not drinking water, so different rules.
At a grave.
But they want to make sure that they don't have it creeping into their system from the PFAS contaminants that are already on the base, that are known on the base. So it's one of the things DEP is making the VA worry about. But yeah, I think maybe a statement about that in the future, should PFAS treatment requirements for wastewater become a new regulation, that they would be required to comply with that. I think they have to anyway, but
We might
if
as
you want me
well
to
do it.
put that, a statement like that, I can do that.
Yeah, I think we'd like that.
I think it's just, those are state laws, you have to comply.
Right, I think they have to comply anyway.
Yeah. We're just making.
I just
making
don't
it clear
know
they
what
can't
to
be
say
grandfathered.
about PFAS. I don't know what the additional things to comply with the local bylaw that they can do. They've already tried. I don't think it's known yet, nor do I think any construction materials supplier nationwide want to do testing for PFAS so they can wave the flag saying, hey, we have PFAS in our roof shingles. You know, don't use us. They're not going to do that. So I don't know how the industry is going to improve that yet. But anyway, I'll come up with some language. I think we do need to comment about PFAS. We absolutely do, especially in light of what happened last night at the public meeting.
Yeah. All right.
Move to adjourn.
When are we continuing? When are we doing this again?
Yeah, when's the next meeting?
July 9th.
You don't have to continue this because it's,
No, it's
No,
just
I
a
don't mean
hearing.
continue, I'm just using, when are we coming back?
July 9th.
July 9th.
That's all I want to know.
So motion to adjourn,
Second.
all in favor?
Larry Keane, aye.
Brian Sullivan, aye.
Brian Murphy, aye.
Heidi Conway, aye. Jean Lee, aye.
Mac Brothers, aye.
Thank you.
Is that it? All right.
Yep.